Vallejo. Trustee Stafford.
Here.
Trustee Campos.
Here.
And myself here. We have established a quorum. Item 3.1, invitation to address the Board of Trustees for closed session items only.
No cards this afternoon.
Thank you, sir. Item 4.1, adjourn to closed session. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? See none, please vote. Item passes 4-0. And one absent, so, okay. Wow, I can't spell. We're adjourning to closed session at 3:01 PM. Item 5.1, the special board meeting of Paris Union High School District is reconvening at 5:04 PM. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Item 6.1, revision, adoption, ordering of agenda, June 3rd, 2024. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Any discussion? Please vote. Item 6.1 is a 5-0 vote. Report out of closed session.
Good afternoon, Board President. My name is Enrique Vasallo, Counsel for the District. I'm reporting out pursuant to Government Code Section 54953. The Board's decision in closed session to appoint Joseph Williams as Acting Superintendent to serve pending appointment of a permanent superintendent with Mr. Williams' contract of employment to be agendized for approval at the upcoming regular board meeting. The motion was made by Board Member Steve Campos, seconded by Board Member Anthony Stafford Sr. To appoint Mr. Williams as the Acting Superintendent. Board Member Garcia voted A. David Nellison voted A. Anthony Stanford Sr. Voted A. Steve Campos voted A. Elizabeth Vallejo voted nay. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Williams. Item 8.1, invitation to address the Board of Trustees on non-agendized items.
We have one card this evening. Ashley Williamson.
Ashley Williamson. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With the board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for the public presentation, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. In addition, the president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that the additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Ashley Williamson. This is such a lovely board, and I hate to make any anxiety by airing out some dirty laundry. On May 3rd, 2024, Steve Campos donated $200 to the Inland Empire Family PAC. On his donation, he recorded his profession as a teacher in the Temecula Valley District and addressed being in Marietta. I want to ask District 1 trustee, what other occasions besides school board meetings bring you to the city of Paris? The Inland Empire Family PAC was founded by ultra-conservative 412 Church Temecula Valley pastor Tim Thompson, where the PAC successfully placed 5 candidates across Temecula, Murrieta, and Lake Elsinore districts. This particular event's billing focused on, quote, taking back the school boards. Exhibit B, Stevens posts and replies on Twitter. In his own words, and I quote, "The Democratic Party is the greatest existential threat to our country." And another posted less than 1 year ago, "I support trustee Dr. K, Jen W, and Danny G. These 3 board members from Temecula Valley are the exact trustees who were placed in power by the IE Family PAC that Campos has just donated to. The same trustees whose recall is up for election this November for their hyper-partisan politics and support for forced outing policies." So who are we taking the school boards back from? Stephen, is it Democrats? Are we taking it back from diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives? Are we taking it back from Dr. Cassandra McNair? So I urge the board today to reinstate our DEI director, as I urge the public to question the motives of Trustee Campos. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more?
No further comments.
Thank you. Item 9.1, curriculum, public hearing for the local control accountability plan and the annual update for 2024-25. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing to receive comments regarding the local control accountability plan and annual update for 2024-25?
So moved.
Is there a second? Public hearing regarding the, oh wait, my bad. I keep reading? I don't vote, right? Not yet. Right. The public hearing regarding the local control accountability plan and annual update for 2024-25 is now open at 5:10 PM.
We have no public comments this evening. Oh, student services will do a report to start off the meeting.
Oh, a lot of stuff, I know, I'm sorry. Oh, this one, right, the white one, yeah, the other one is for later. So in your binder, you do have a few things. Well, good evening. We are going to be here just for a little bit, just to kind of share with you our progress for 23-24 and our next steps for our LCAP for 24-25. So you have a copy of the PowerPoint. You also have a copy of the BOP, which is the Budget Overview for Parents. Thank you. And you also have the draft LCAP based on any feedback or information from the public or from input from the board and cabinet as well. We can make any final adjustments. Just to give you just a brief summary for those of you that don't remember the process, the county we've already submitted the draft to RCOE. They gave us feedback. We've corrected the feedback. We've sent it back to them. So we're hoping that anything that comes from their office will be very minor. A lot of the feedback that we got from the county was mostly just some updates on some metrics, as well as just kind of breaking out and identifying some actions in our new Goal 5, which I'll go over shortly. So we're just kind of waiting for the second set of feedbacks from them. But pretty much it's been pretty smooth on the fast pass from the county. Okay, hold on. Oh, wait. Oh, my gosh. Is this one where I have to make sure it's turned on? Yep. Wait. I'm having a moment. Okay, I don't feel so bad now. Seriously? Okay, so while they're going through that, you have the PowerPoint, and we'll get caught up as we go through. So just to kind of, is it working? Oh. Yay, thank you. Okay, so it wasn't quite operator error. That's good. So as you know, the LCAP is our local plan to address our supplemental concentration funds. And those funds are generated by our English learners, our low income, and our foster youth. So this plan is reviewed and monitored throughout the year. And so part of what is included, and some of this I know is just old information, but just for the purposes of the public and those that are listening, the LCAP is made up of general information. It's made up of our successes, our challenges, and what we plan on doing for next year. We're also going to look at comprehensive support and improvement if we were identified in any areas that we need to look at. We also have a portion of engaging our educational partners. That's a big piece of our information. Again, goals, actions, and services. And then towards the end of the document is our increased and improved services and how we're going to address our English learners, our low income, and our foster youth. And then we have our budget tables. So that is laid out. So for you, what you have is a copy of the PowerPoint, and then you have our BOP, which is our budget overview for parents, and then you have the actual LCAP draft that was sent to the county. And the first part of it is our annual update, which addresses the 23-24 metrics, goals, actions, and services. And then from there, we move on to the 24-25, which is the first year of our next 3-year cycle for the LCAP. So that's what's included in the documents that you've got in front of you. The process, as we've explained before, and it's pretty standard for us, is that we have a sequence throughout the year that we look at our data metrics. So for those of you that have been with us, usually in the fall, we review our LCAP Goal 2. Much of those metrics are available to us after June 30th and when the school closes. And then we report that out. So Dr. Cahoon has done that and shared that with you. We'll be doing that again in the fall. When we get to our winter, which is after first semester, Mr. Tippie prepares and goes over our LCAP Goal 1, because most of that we have all the dashboard data, we have our local indicators, as well as our first semester grades. And then in spring, both myself and Mr. Atkins reviews goals 3 and 4. And we tend to push those off towards the end so that we can collect more accurate data as we get closer to the end of the school. And then, of course, in June, we have our special board meeting, which we're here tonight. And then we have regular board meeting, which we are going to ask for your approval. So between that time, what we like to do is this is an open forum. This is for discussion and opportunity to share. I know that there's been some questions on some areas, so hopefully we're coming with enough information to provide you outside of what we have on the PowerPoints. So we have 5 goals, so we're going to address all of those. We're going to go over the annual update. So the way the slides are set up is that you're going to hear the successes, the identified needs, and then the next steps. So each of the directors are going to come up and they're going to share that information, most of which you have heard already this year. So we're not going to go into a deep dive on the metrics. They are going to point out some of the successes, some of the metrics that have worked really well, and then some of the challenges or identified needs, and then our areas of focus so that we can, as we plan our goals, actions, and services for next year. So we try to tie all of those together, so it's very easy as far as the routine, so that you are going to see everything that we've talked about all year. So the first thing I want to share for the 23-24, this is the alignment with our business department. And so this is our budget overview for parents. So the total LCFF funds, that is what the district receives. Part of that, which is the numbers below the supplemental concentration grant funds, are what we are talking about tonight, which is those funds that are generated by our foster, our low income, and our English learners. So that's how much money we've got coming in that we are addressing for this year. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tippie. So he's going to go over the successes, the identified needs, and talk about next steps. And that's pretty much how the evening will go. Please stop and ask any questions after each of the presentations. I'll just let you know, it's this button right here. Okay, yeah.
Same one we've always been
One on
using.
the other side.
Good evening. So as Diane mentioned, I'm going to share the successes for goal number 1 that focuses on academics. So to start off, our some really great thing to celebrate is our English learner reclassification rate. So that marks the point when an English learner meets all of the academic standards to move from an EL to a reclassified fluent English proficient student, so something that we really focus on and celebrate. So our reclassification rate for the 2022-23 school year was estimated at 18.2%. CDE hasn't come out with their official data yet. They're a little bit behind. We did get LPAC scores in last week, and we've reclassified, we have about 220 students that meet the requirements, so we're actively making phone calls home, meeting with parents, and finalizing that process. So our 2023-24 school year is looking good in that sense too, and I'm estimating about 18% right now, and that'll hopefully go up a little bit as well. So really, really happy about that. Moving on to the academic indicator for ELA, our Asian and Filipino subgroups scored in the status of high, so something to really celebrate there. And then we had very significant improvement for our African American subgroup at 45.8 points. And if you look at the 5x5 dashboard, any movement above 20 points is considered extremely significant. So for those subgroups to hit 45, that's double what you need to be considered extremely significant on the dashboard for growth. So our homeless subgroup, also 43.4 points. And then every other subgroup except for the white subgroup improved at least 8 points. And then we had an overall improvement of 9.3 points. So good improvement for ELA, not where we need to be yet, but we did have a good growth year from last year to the previous school year. For our academic indicator in math, the Asian and Filipino subgroups did well in comparison to all the others with the status of medium. Unfortunately, math is still a high area of need, and I'll point that out on the next slide there. And then under the direction of Emil in our special ed department, we will be offering extended school year for all of our special ed students to get them caught up on credit recovery and then remediation in content as well. So identified needs, you can see on the left, dashboard results for ELA. Even though we did have good improvement last year, we still have a lot of our subgroups in the low or the very low category. So when we looked at the goals for the LCAP moving forward, we looked at the way that the dashboard calculates significant growth. So if you can see a subgroup is in the very low category, we wanted to see extreme growth by the third year in the LCAP cycle. And then other subgroups that are in the high status, their goals will be to maintain that status. I want to get all of our kids up to the high or the very high status on the dashboard. And then the 2023 English Learner Proficiency Indicator, so this is looking at our EL students, and this is looking at students who progressed 1 year from the next. There's two different ways you can look at the test score data. You can look at the percentage of students that got a 4, percentage that got a 3, 2, and so forth. What the dashboard looks at is the percentage of students that moved. So you could have a newcomer student that went from a 1 to a 2, or they even break it down into subcategories for the 2s and the 3s. You could go from a low 2 to a high 2, and that would count as growth. So that's what that's looking at. So our LP status was a 51.1%. We had 49.8 of our students progress a level, so that could be going from that 1 to a 2 or a 2 low to a 2 high, and it also combines the students who maintained a level of a 4. You're going to see one thing to kind of highlight in this data, it's saying EL students who maintain an LP level of 4, it's only 1.3%. The reason that's very low is because once a student hits a 4, we work really hard to reclassify them. So that's the criteria that CDE uses for reclassification. You have to have a 4 in the LPAC. So that 1.3 that you're seeing there are students that had a 4 2 years in a row. So they got the LPAC requirement, but they weren't able to get the ELA requirement, and we continue providing support until they do meet that requirement. And then the others maintained and decreased. Trustee Campos? and regress. So we do continue monitoring students for 4 years. We have our Elevation platform that keeps track of that. So we have that subgroup that we monitor. Sure. Okay. Correct. Yeah, so when the student goes from EL to reclassified fluent English proficient, RFEP, the Elevation platform is the EL database that helps us identify students that are newcomer students that reclassify. It helps all the monitoring forms. We keep track of all of the documentation for federal program monitoring. So we have that set up, and then it pushes those forms out to teachers to identify students that might need additional interventions. Most of the time what we're seeing is students, once they do reclassify, it's not so much a language acquisition issue, it's more of maybe attendance or other discipline type things, supports that we provide. We do have at each of the schools, comprehensive high schools and the middle school, we have EL teacher leads. Those teachers are released 4 periods at the comprehensives and Pinacate, and then Paloma and Liberty, they're 2 periods. But they have those times off where they focus on providing interventions to our EL students and then monitoring those students. Correct. Yep, yep. Any other questions on this part of it so far? And then, as I mentioned earlier, math continues to be a struggle. We pretty much all of our overall status and most of our subgroups are at the very low or low status. And then we did have declines from the 2023 school year or testing season to the previous one. So math is definitely a big focus for us moving forward in our LCAP. Actions, so these are the actions that we have identified in the LCAP. One of these moved into Goal 3. It supported students in the mental health categories. That's Marvin and Emil's under their direction. They'll be supporting that. So we have 1.1 literacy and math, enhancing the core curriculum, ideas of promoting literacy in all of the content areas, English, math, science, social studies, along with integrated ELD. And then instructional technology, huge component. I can tell you we just finished up testing season, and thanks to Mr. Williams and his team to really support us in getting through that. Our kids really benefit from all of the technology training and support that they get. And then 1.3, the English Learner Supplemental Services, and I'll go into a little bit more details there. So we'll continue professional development to support integrated ELD. All of the teachers in the district the last several years, 3 or 4 years, they've had training on integrated ELD, which is really, in summary, teaching the ELD standards in all the content areas. So in the math classroom, you're still teaching math standards, the polynomials and those standards, but you're teaching using the ELD standards to support the EL students in that content area. So we'll continue providing training for them on that. Our literacy coaches did literacy training for the teachers as well. They had 2 separate blocks of training that they went through for that. And then in terms of the EL, Mr. Bennett asked me to talk a little bit about how we're supporting our newcomer students. So in your folders, there's a 1-page handout, and I just kind of list, all of this is in the LCAP or the addendums, but I kind of just wanted to highlight some of the supports that we're providing for our newcomer students. So newcomer meaning that the student's newly enrolled to a U.S. school. So kind of just go through that list here. On a curriculum side, we have Rosetta Stone, which is a language acquisition platform, helps students learn the basics of the language, starting with vocabulary, listening, reading, speaking, and writing. All of our students are in a 2-period block of sheltered ELA, so they're getting instruction on the ELA standards, and then their designated ELD. With the same teacher at the high school, we have the Cengage Edge program that we've had for several years, and then at the middle school, they use English 3D, and there's a newcomers support platform with that. We also have one period, it's a course that we approved back in 2017. It's called Academic Guidance for College and Career Success. So this is a class designed specifically for newcomer students to really get them accustomed to school, the new school environment in the U.S. And there's different modules in this where they look at setting goals, learning styles, study skills, getting used to the new technology, so using maybe Canvas or Infinite Campus, new things like that, college planning, career readiness. And then we also fund avid tutors to come in and support the students in their other content areas. So the newcomer students are struggling more so with math and science and history when they go off into the mainstream classes. So the avid tutors come in 2 days a week and do modified tutorials to support the students in those content areas. And then if you remember, we approved TutorMe. So TutorMe is a program that's available for all students, and it's online video conferencing, gives the students access to a live tutor where they can check in, ask questions. We have Spanish-speaking tutors available to help the kids in those different content areas. And then all of our ELD classes are staffed at 25-1, so that gives the teacher opportunities to monitor students, provide additional supports for the students. And then once again, our EL teacher leads that are released 4 periods, Pinacati, Paris High School, and Heritage. And then at the other sites, their numbers are a little bit lower, so they only have 2 periods of release, but they monitor the kids as well. They do data chads, sometimes pull them out and provide additional instruction for them as well. And then we have had an increase of our newcomer and students. When students are new to California and they come from a 2-language home, we give them the initial LPAC assessment. That's a state requirement. So our initial testing numbers have gone up this year. And I kind of dove deeper into the data and looked at enrollment from 1819, 1920, the last several years, and looked at the percentage of students that are between 0 and 3 years into a U.S. school, and it's increased from about 6% to just this spring about 13.2%. So those numbers are increasing. Some of our sites are struggling with that a little bit. So I have that graph in the one pager there, and then I also listed out the number of newcomers per site that we currently have right now, and looking at different ways to support them. I know that kind of a little bit of a sidetrack, but it's definitely related, and it's in the LCAP, but I know there were questions about how we're supporting our newcomer students. We're still on 1. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so we're still on here, and then also another thing, just really quickly, implementation of the interim assessment blocks, really getting back to the basics, making sure that instruction is matching the rigors of the assessments. So administering those assessments that are aligned to the SBAC, and then also working with the teachers to not only administer the assessments, look at the data, identify where the kids are struggling, and then provide interventions to get them caught up. And so now we're on the line item for the budget.
Just in case he has some questions I can't answer on the EL stuff. So the first part, this is just a recap of our annual update. So this is our budget, and then our estimated actuals, which the year has not closed yet, June 30th. So we are obviously anticipating that we will be spending down all of that. So the first slide just encompasses the current 23-24, and then the next slide is the proposed budget moving forward. Charge of the clicker. Okay. Yes.
I see on, I think it was that one, or the second one of the budget, it says transportation contribution. What does that mean specifically?
So back a couple of cycles ago, and just in case I misjudge this, it's been a while. So when we went to an extended day for CTE or 7-period, was it the 7-period day? Yeah, that might be best, because it's been a while. on that one, because we've had a contribution to transportation for a bit in the LCAP, yeah.
Yeah, so remember that supplemental concentration dollars are things, above and beyond. So home to school transportation is not a requirement, different from curb to curb under, IEPs, special education transportation. So with this being an allowable expense to put in supplemental concentration, the supplemental concentration is able to absorb that rather than the quote regular general fund. So it's actually been in there, I think, since the inception.
Yeah, for a
So,
while. Okay,
yeah.
very good. Senior moments, sorry. Mm-hmm.
It's really just our transportation distances in which we transport. It's interesting that you asked that question, and does transportation increase, ADA or not? It's sort of an age-old question, if you will. We last tested that, so to speak, in this district. I want to say in about maybe 2014 or so, maybe 2013, when we were going through, the last recession. And we didn't cut summer school, but we had traditionally always offered home, not just curb to curb, like was required for extended school year, but we offered home to school transportation for summer school. And we just simply couldn't afford that with the budget cuts that we were faced with. And so we wondered and we worried if we would have a high attendance rate at summer school for the students who, needed to be attending summer school. And what we found was no difference, actually. So this contribution isn't tied directly to try to increase ADA or anything like that. It's just simply a function of the state does not provide, similar to special ed, the state does not provide us enough money to cover the costs of transporting our students. Anyone that qualifies. So outside of special education, you qualify for transportation at the middle school level, at 3 or more miles away from the school, and at the high school level, 5 or more miles away from the school. It would be interesting. I think the most recent district that comes to mind that has cut home to school transportation is the Menifee Union School District, and they did that in, I'm not going to try to pinpoint the year, but in recent memory, I'll say again. So it would be interesting to look at their ADA capture rate, attendance rates there. Okay.
Well, thank you, Candace. That was very comprehensive. Okay.
One more. So for the one that says math support sections, and it says Paris High School Heritage and Paloma, what are like math support sections? Why is it just those 3 schools? Are those the one that has the most issues?
For both years. Arts.
Yeah.
I don't know, Shannon, if you want to take it's the math restarts, lower class size, so those are students that were not making Algebra 1, and so these different schools opted to reintroduce those students, and please, if I'm these are not my areas of expertise. I just coordinate this whole thing, but I'm going to have Shannon just talk about the math support.
And those were from when they originally did this cycle of the LCAP. So it was a student failed first semester of Algebra 1. They offered first semester Algebra 1 during semester 2, and then semester 2 of Algebra and during semester 1. Paloma Valley has since absolved all of their restarts. It was a trend for a while, but you can see where the difficulty is when you leave for 2 months in the middle of a course. To pick it back up at first semester is very, very challenging.
So is this the one where if you fail it and you take it next semester, you take that extra math support class where it just...
My understanding is these are the restarts.
Oh, just the restarts. Okay. Okay.
Now, I'll just,
Yes.
and originally when we did that, the goal was to have the kids go to summer school and take the second semester so they stayed on track. But most of the kids didn't want to do that, so we would have to do a second semester during the first semester the next year.
So technically 3 semesters.
Yeah, this would, yeah, yep, yep. I don't think that that's in their schedule. Mm-mm. Yeah. Mhm. Yes, I mean, typically, we don't like to include names, as I mentioned before, but we do have, so this is the coordinator in Ed Services is in the curriculum and instruction piece. So that role, and I don't know if you want to talk anymore about that role, assists in the instructional planning, also handles a lot of the software platforms that we use for across the district to help support the academic instruction and after-school programs, so he oversees quite a bit, and I don't know, you've got him.
After school, esports, a lot of our contracts with our publishing companies, helping to establish training for new textbook adoptions, and help managing the CMP.
Yes. Yep. Yep. That's part, I will just say that is part of my salary, and down below is also part of Tippy's salary. So outside of this, there's another, yeah, yep, yep, yep. So we're multi-funded, so I'm like state and federal programs outside of this, I'm funded through our categoricals, not the general fund. And Charles, because he does assessments and accountability, and that's a base service, so part of his salary is out of LCAP and looking at the EL, but most of his job is really all assessments and accountability for all students. So most of his salary comes from the general fund. That is a person in our office, the classified personnel, and they handle all registrations, conferences, any professional development, any of our internal workshops and trainings that we have with our teachers across the district. So she handles all of that. Yep. Registration, yes, all the paperwork that comes with that. Oh, no, that's her title. Yeah, that is her title. Well, we set this aside. We don't know what this might look like in October with new leadership coming. So to err on the side of caution, we wanted to ensure that we have some allocation set aside for whatever direction the cabinet wants to go with regards to PD in October. No. It's just, well, it's not, yeah, it's not fluff. It's not fluff, but it's a placeholder. Yeah, it's a placeholder so that decisions that need to be made when new leadership comes in, if they want to bring an outside consultant, we have a budget line for them.
And then, so the PD days were the 2 days in October where all staff are on campus and that we provide lunch.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Okay, and of course you are, as we are able to communicate and share with you, please, if you have questions following this, we are text or an email away if you have a follow-up question. And we'll have time at the end if something comes up as well. Okay. So thank you, Charles. So,
I'm very curious. You have one full-time employee to maintain severely handicapped, level 3. We're talking, go back, $203,000.
so that is, and Emil can talk, that's our, we have 3 levels, and I'm not going to profess to know special ed, but this is his area of expertise. So this is to retain a teacher in order to help continue services for our.
But it says one
This is the
FTE.
One FTE
Yes,
for the
so-
teacher.
So we have our moderate to severe levels, and we
Right.
have 3 different levels.
I'm aware.
We currently have one teacher that I believe is going out, and we need to replace that teacher.
And that's what they're making right now,
Well, that
203,000.
includes benefits.
That's with
Yeah.
benefits.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
That position is floating.
I think until we find the person.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't have someone now.
No, it's a certificated
cer-
employee, it's a certificated person. Oh, okay. We could go with both. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go, Dr. Cahoon's going to come up and she's going to, again, share the successes, identified needs, kind of next steps. And then if you have any questions, we'll follow that up.
Good evening, Board. Good evening, Cabinet. So I'm going to go through this here quickly. So our successes this year, one of the things that we've been very successful in is recovering the credits to maintain A through G status for students. So as we're identifying students that have not been initially successful in a course, they're able to retake the class in order to get an A, B, or C, which would allow them to have that A through G credit. We've also been able to increase our A through G completion overall for students. For foster youth, we increased over 12%, and for homeless, we increased over 9%. And then our socioeconomically disadvantaged students, over 54%, and our Hispanic students, over 38%. So these are huge strides in A through G completion for our students, guaranteeing that they are college and career ready when they graduate from a Harris Union High School District school. We also began the process of vertical articulation and developing PLCs and identifying essential standards, reviewing scope and sequence to meet academic needs of students. What this allows is that for students that are taking a class, we want them to be successful the first time. So while the A through G credit recovery is a good thing, we don't want to have the need for credit recovery. And by aligning everything that our teachers are doing, we're allowed to really perfect our Tier 1 instruction, our best first instruction for students in order to guarantee that type of success. In our CTE pathways, our pathway completers for all students increased by 3.3% and with a pass rate of nearly 85%, and that was an increase in all subgroups as well. We have CTE courses of study that are now current, and our pathway coding has been cleaned up and revised in our SIS for accuracy. We did have some coding issues that led to some inaccurate reporting into CalPADS for our completers. And there's multiple ways that you can code a CTE course. There is an overarching code that goes into CalPADS, but then each pathway has its own. You have your own intros, and then it goes into different concentrators and capstones, and so you can't mix those. You can't, even within ag, I can't go and take like animal science and then econ as a capstone. That won't work because those are 2 capstones. And then you have to take the concentrator and then the capstone in order for it to count. You no longer have to take the introductory for it to count, but we do have those introductory courses, especially for things like the sciences, because we know that they need to have either their biology or their environmental sciences as their foundational piece. The pathway offerings are now aligned as well with student interests. As you can see with Ms. Martin, she's been very careful about selecting pathways that students have an engagement with, but we also are able to align it with growth opportunities in the area. With regards to our comprehensive counseling programs, we've been very diligent in providing professional development through our County Office of Education. So we have a team that comes and works specifically with our counselors on best practices, on validation processes, on how to counsel students both social emotionally as well as academically, so that they are meeting those A through G requirements and that they know how to do things like complete their FAFSA, how to get their college applications going, how to research schools that are going to be aligned to them, and how to search for scholarships to pay for schools, whether they be trade school or the university. The counseling teams also are provided opportunities to attend different professional developments. There are certain ones that are really required in order for them to do their job. The UC and Cal State tend to change things from year to year, so attending a professional development day sponsored by them is important because that's how they know how to come back and validate a transcript. So what happens is sometimes a kid might take a class and they may not do well in it, but if they take another class and do well in it, that then validates that original class, and that can make them an A through G student. The other piece is there was a need for NCAA training for our student athletes, so we actually were able to identify someone who is both a coach and a counselor that's an expert in NCAA. They came out and provided an intensive, we split it over 2 days. It was a 3-hour training. One day was the logistics of just being an academic student athlete and doing the academic component for NCAA. And then the second part was the social emotional needs of our student athletes. Many of our student athletes struggle with mental health. There's high depression and suicide rates. So it's how do we work with those students so that we can set them up for success when they eventually go off to the university and they're competing at a higher level. Yes. He did go over that as well. Yeah. Yes. And the good thing is that a lot of the NCAA requirements parallel our A through G requirements, so it's not anything extra. He did explicitly go through the NEIA though, because he coaches at an NEIA school and wanted them to know understand and just the opportunities that are available for those students. And then overall, we've at our comprehensive sites, we've increased our A through G completion by 10%. And that's been a lot of the hard work of our district counselors and Aspire team. Finally, onto the college and career readiness. We see students are very successful in our dual enrollment classes. We had 1,185 students enrolled in 22-23. We had a 90% pass rate on those courses. So those students are not only getting high school credit, but they are receiving their college credits as well. And the long-term impact of this is for students specifically, they're going to a school in California. They graduate typically a semester or a quarter early, depending on which school that they go to, which is a huge cost savings for many of our students by not having to take those additional courses. The students submitted over 2,500 more applications to public colleges and universities in 2022. Over half of our students were either prepared or approaching prepared on the CCI indicators on the California dashboard. And we've actually had some pretty intensive training on the CCI indicators that are there for everybody. And then we increased the courses that meet A through G requirements. You've been fortunate enough this past year to see the over 100 courses of study that have come across your desk for approval. A lot of it was updating, but a good portion of that was also making sure that courses that were not A through G were A through G. Our goal is to have every class that a student is taking barring some essentials for our students struggling that are special education or like PE, because that's not an A through G class, that they are getting A through G credit. So things like ROTC that typically hasn't been is now A through G. All of our VAPA are now A through G, and they weren't before. And so this is a huge improvement for our students and helping them meet that criteria. Mm-hmm. Yes, and I apologize. I put it into the full LCAP, and I do not remember the exact percentage that is in there, but I did put in a goal there. And another piece of this one also had to do with our documenting and coding things in Infinite Campus that feeds over to CalPADS. So we're part of the CCI convening through the county, and we actually spent a day with registrars and some counselors, my coordinator of Ed Services, going through how those indicators need to be marked so that they're pulling to give us accurate data. Yeah. All right. So on to the identified needs. With 2.1 with student support and interventions, we did see a decrease in graduation rate by 10.5% with our homeless students and by 1.5% with our white students. Part of the PLC process that I referenced earlier is sharing of best practices. And when we see groups that are experiencing success, it's honing in on what the root causes of that success so that we can replicate that with groups that maybe aren't having that success. So seeing that we had improvements with other groups, we would definitely want to look and see what is it that we did with those students to help them. We did see a decrease in A through G completion, though, for our English learners, our students with disabilities. It was slight, but it was still a decrease. We saw an extensive decrease with our African American students and with our white students. And so once again, it's looking at those overall where we improved, understanding what was it that we did to seek that improvement, and replicating some of those strategies with our students that actually showed a decrease, because those are very alarming numbers to see a decrease in A through G, especially for some of our most vulnerable student groups. So I was fortunate to maintain one of the district counselors, and she's actually been pivotal in helping the sites in identifying early on students that are at risk of not meeting the A through G and intervening, whether it's retaking a class, it's revisiting their schedule, whether it is making sure that we're validating the courses correctly. So yes, there is a plan. Through her work, we have a lot of data that we comb through, and then the work that both Mr. Atkins and I do with he was there. Oh, he was there. I'm like, he left me. With our counselors, we have regular counseling institutes, and then that's also the work with the county, because the A through G's, what qualifies and validates is moving, so we want to make sure that they have the most accurate information. Transcript analysis is actually a huge piece. So one of the things that I did this year is I made sure that there was dedicated days for the counselors to sit down and go through their transcripts and to validate courses, but to also make sure that students are taking the right class. You know, on average, our counselors have a very large caseload, and I don't know how many of you have had the fortunate experience of transcript analysis. I know I was lucky to do that as a teacher with the county years ago, and it is a very tedious process. And so we're working on processes to get that transcript analysis the most accurate that it can be. And I'm working with the teams on how do we designate time to make sure that they are able to review all of their students' information, to make sure that they're getting into the right classes, to make sure they're retaking where they need to retake, to make sure that the transcript is validated appropriately. And that is part of it. The literacy and math are so closely related to each other. So if we can improve the English and the math performances, that's definitely one piece of it, is getting an A, B, or C in those classes. The other piece is making sure that students are taking the right series of classes to meet the A through G. So sometimes kids get tired and they want to withdraw from a class or change it over to something that's more fun. And so we're trying to have that accountability in those conversations. So one of the things that we have now is we have an A through G drop list. You don't just get to go change your class. You're going to have a meeting with the counselor. You're going to have a meeting with the administrator. We're going to talk to your parents, and we're going to explain why this is important. A through G is very misleading, and a lot of times people think A through G university. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but A through G is the preparation for career as well. When you look at getting kids, I say opportunity ready, so that they have the choices to what they want to do. But the reading level, for example, the Lexile level that's required for a freshman English class at the university is the same as a lot of the manuals that mechanics are introduced to going into the field. So there is a correlation of A through G with the career readiness. Okay, CT. Okay, lack of common assessment, that goes actually with our PLC process. We're looking to really secure the data and identify best practices and where there is a need to ensure that we are making decisions in the classroom to improve best first instruction based off of the data that we have. We don't want to make assumptions. The challenge that we have in high school now is that we only get SBAC scores for 11th grade. So we don't have anything in 9th and 10th to compare it to. If we look at this year's and last year's, those are two different groups of kids. And because we're not a unified district, it's difficult to pull in that 8th grade. Plus, you all know between 8th grade and 11th grade, that's a big difference in development. So by having our in-home, and I know that Mr. Tippie alluded to the IABs as one of those measures that we will utilize. One of the needs, I talked about this earlier, is just continuing to accurately align the CTE pathways and where students are placed. Continue to work on the comprehensive counseling program. Very honest, there was some morale issues following some of the budget cuts that occurred and some losses there, so we know that that's going to be a challenge moving forward. The other piece was a lack of consistency in practices, and Mr. Atkins and I both work with our counseling team. We've been very diligent about aligning practices and policies so that there's consistency. The education a student gets at Parrish should be the same as Paloma, the same as Liberty, the same as Heritage, and so forth. With regard to college career readiness, our AVID participation has minimal growth in it, and we'd like to see that improve because we know that does help increase our A through G performance. And you know, Mr. Tippie talked about this. He gave it to you in points. I put it in percentage. We continue to see a decline in our scores for both English and for mathematics. All right, so our goals moving forward. One piece I'd like to point out is that we did have a 2.4. That was our college and career counseling. We've folded that into college and career readiness because it really is one of the same. It's not something that's independent, and all systems need to work together. All right, so moving forward, we want to continue to train and coach and support the reimplementation of the PLC process. It was, you know, a functioning system pre-COVID, and coming back from COVID, some best practices got left beside. We need to, you know, refocus our strategies on what are we teaching our kids, how do we know that they're learning it, what do we do when they don't learn it, and what do we do when they do know it. Continuing to communicate with educational partners to make sure that we are aligned for both academic and career programs. Provide our support to students and families on various college and career preparedness. Collaborate between general ed and special education providers to increase student access to courses that are required to improve student achievement. So this is more of an inclusive model for education and increasing access of our special education students to more courses of rigor. This is all teachers. This is really, yeah, I mean, the admin is a part of it, but they're going to kind of facilitate, but the teachers are the ones that do the work. If you go into a PLC, the admin's not sitting with you. You're the one that is driving those decisions. So when we bring in a team of teachers, for example, We're giving them tools and some structures, but they're the ones that are saying, these are the essential standards that we need. This is what kids need to know when they leave my class. This is what they really need to have when they're successful. These are the different types of common assessments we might use. Where admin comes in is sometimes, if you've ever heard the phrase that we're data rich and analysis poor. So we have a lot of data, but not necessarily knowing what to do with the data. That's where admin can come in and support and kind of help break it down. Yeah, it's a team effort for sure. Let's see here. Okay, went over that one. SIS training and systems implementation to make sure that our CTE coding is accurate, make sure the pathways are accurate. This was a huge piece. Sandy really helped us prior to her retirement in cleaning up, like I said, that coding. What we are intending on doing this summer is my secretary is very good with our Infinite Campus. We will be sitting down and going through every single course that we offer to make sure that in that course master that it's accurately put into Infinite Campus, so when it pulls the CalPads, we don't have any issues. We are looking at continued counselor training. We currently use CCGI, which reports to California colleges. Maya is another platform that was introduced. We're going to roll slow with this. Maya is more of a national, so this is where students can do their applications for the Common App, which a lot of like our Ivy Leagues utilize, and then they have access to additional scholarships that are available. Let's see, we're going to continue the support with our COE for the comprehensive counseling program and academic leadership team. We're really working with Pinacati on making sure that they have the supports that they need, being that it's our feeder middle school, and we know that we really need to capture our students at the middle school level. An intensive district-wide support in mathematics. We're getting a lot of support from our COE with this process. I've really worked with some really great math teachers that are thinking outside the box. Piloting different math courses, different approaches to teaching mathematics. They've attended the community of practice that the county has, which is a really great opportunity where math teachers come together, have conversations about teaching math. They'll be actually coming out and they will be going through a CASP deep dive with teachers. What's on the test? What does the data mean when we see it? Revisiting just those standards, making sure that as we identify essential standards, we're selecting the appropriate ones that align from Algebra 1 to Algebra 2. Geometry is kind of the off one there, but making sure that there's that alignment. And then understanding the shifts around the new California framework. The new California framework is highly conceptual, which is a little bit of a shift from the procedural practices that most math teachers are used to. Procedural is absolutely important, but it's really getting the application there and changing the mindset around mathematics so that they get that real life application, and then continued AVID training.
And just like the other previous goals, so this is our wrap up for this year, our proposed budget expenditures, our proposed budget and expenditures, and then the next slide is the proposed budget moving forward. So the RCOE contract, those are literally like all of the, well, it's probably easier to explain the district CTE teachers. Outside of the contract, all of our ag teachers are considered CTE. Outside of RCOE, we have about 5 teachers that hold 2 credentials. They're dual credentials, single subject and a CTE authorization. So those are what I would refer to as our in-house teachers. We have a few at Paloma, we have one at Heritage, a couple at Paris High. So those are district, there are employees on the district side. The RCOE contract is our contract for services, and most of those are at Liberty. We have a few at Paris High, a couple, 1 or 2 at each of the schools. Oh. Oh. Yep. That would. Yeah. No? Well, let's not be shocked. Yes, because I think that was probably just an oversight, and I don't think we moved it. Let me just check LCAP Goal 3 to see if we moved it there. Nope. So that is one thing that we do have to modify and change on here. And this is our PowerPoint, so while we're moving on, I'm going to go check in our DTS what actually was submitted. So I'll get back to you on that one.
Now, would that be the same figure that? Although this time it's
Nope.
in the 24, 25. That's why.
Oh, we moved it to, oh, okay, yes, we moved it to 1. We moved it to 1. Okay, so there, yes. Yes. Yep. Yep, yes, to a different goal, yes. Thank you all for that collective help right there. Oh my God. I know we have it in here somewhere, so, okay, thank you for that. On which, are we on the 24, 25? That is, so we are currently working, I believe, with, I think this includes Connect Ed, which is the organization that's been working with us for the last couple of years with Paris High and Liberty High School. They are coming in really with a linked learning approach, and so there is PD that happens every month with the CTE teachers and the content teachers that's facilitated by Connect Ed. And so that is being funded. And I think their actual contract that we're moving forward, I think, is $95,000. Yeah.
So Graduation Alliance is a A through G credit recovery for students that's taught by, they have a teacher that they contract with, so we can't absorb all of our credit recovery through our Plato. It's an accelerated program. These are some of our seniors that have gotten a little bit of senioritis and decided they didn't need to pass their last year of English or economics. So this allows for them to move into that course so that they're able to graduate and maintain their A through G. There's some other classes that they're able to take as well, but it's just another opportunity to. No, it's strictly academics. We've gotten a lot of good feedback from our counselors and students. I've given that second chance.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'd like to introduce Mr. Atkins, who's going to walk us through Goal 3.
All right, thank you. So MTSS, we've heard it, we've seen their presentation before. One of the good things that I will highlight is ATS, and I just have a few numbers for ATS. First of all, good evening, board president, board members, superintendent. I'm sorry, I just jumped right in. All right, with ATS, Paris High School, from August until April, they had 149 people to visit ATS. Paloma Valley, 200. Pinacati, 155. Only, and that's pretty low for Pinacati. I'm going to double check that number, but only the highlight that I have for Pinacati is 95% did not reoffend. So that's 95% of the students stayed out of trouble. At Liberty High School, there were a total of 81 visits, and only 6 of those reoffended. And then Heritage High School, there were a total of 119 visits to ATS. ATS is something that the board and the cabinet decided we're going to be able to maintain. So I will speak a little bit more about ATS as we go through. But MTSS, in creating those tiers of intervention, we worked on accountability matrix that was unified across our district, and we'll make sure that we fine tune and look at that once again. We have incentive programs working with Diane's office for engagement, gifts, gift cards, bikes, all motivating materials. To maintain the facilities through the Williams Act, we were at 100% compliance. And the wellness centers, I will turn it over to Emil. He's going to talk a little bit more about our wellness centers within goal number 3. As I said, the suspension rates, the ATS, it worked. We have a total of 4.49 students of all of our students were suspended, which is a decrease. I think last year it was more along the lines of 7. And then we have our English language learners, 10.12. That was a slight increase. It was 8 point something last year. Foster youth, homeless, students with disabilities, and African Americans. And again, the overall, it was 6.4 last year, and then African Americans, it was 10.1 last year to the 7.84 that you see before you. Our Care Solace, we've spoken about that. We had a total of 256 cases, 11,000, almost 12,000 communications, and then totaling up to 277 service hours. So that's the connection that our students made with mental health services. Identified areas of need, as we all know, and we've talked about it previously, is our attendance rates. Our chronic absentee rate is at nearly 50% across the board. We have an increase in our homeless, students with disabilities, African Americans, and Hispanics. Our attendance rates were at around 88% across the board. That's taking into consideration Pinacotty and our high school comprehensives. Our Healthy Kids Survey is another area of identified needs. 7th graders, this is solely at Pinacotty. We have 467 students who actually took the survey. That's out of 900 students. And out of those 467, 52% of those students felt safe at school. And then we have 49% who felt connected to school. Then we're looking at our 9th and 11th graders, which overall, between the 7th, 8th, and 11th graders, we have an increase of students who are actually taking the survey. We're at roughly 44,000 students who took the survey this year, compared to 2,500 last year. Moving on, in goal number 3, we talk about enhancing student support and engagement. Attendance matters. Securing school environments, and fostering social and emotional health and educational needs. ATS, I spoke about it before, and we have a meeting coming up, matter of fact, on this Thursday with our ATS teachers, myself and Shaquan. We're going to sit down with them. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly from this year, and what we need to do as far as building our curriculum for next year. We're going to commit to meeting on a quarterly basis to make sure that we're continuing the best practices across the district. Our October professional development, I'm so excited. With the encouragement from Mr. Bennett, I attended the AXA Student Services Academy, which is a recognized organization across the board, and I was able to ask several of those presenters to come here to Paris Union High School District for presentations in October. They've committed, and it helps address some of our areas of needs. Our anti-bullying presentation by Dr. Bykendova teen trends with discipline. There, Mr. Morrow, he's coming out to do his presentation. Mr. Garnett Sherman is going to come out and do the do's and don'ts for administrators. Our Title IX is our annual training that we do, and then our annual 504 training. This is also to make sure that we're staying in compliance with all ed code as far as our annual training is concerned. With attendance, what I've found throughout our district is that we have pockets of greatness. At Heritage High School, they have a great system in how they're holding our teachers accountable to make sure that they're taking attendance. At Paris High School, they have a great system of everyone working together to address SART meetings. So what I would like to do and what we've planned to do is to meet with our attendance techs and our APs in the month of July 16th and 17th, we're going to meet. We're going to meet in working with Mr. Williams and his office. We're going to have IC to actually come out one day and do a 4-hour training on July 16th. And then on July 17th, the attendance techs again and our APs are going to get together and we're going to talk about these best practices. What are we doing across the board to address our attendance? Like I said before, we have great practices across the district. Now it's time to come together as one district to address the issues. We have training, and as Dr. Cahoon said, we're going to work with our guidance counselors and administrative staff on student success teams. We're going to address academics, attendance, behavior, and social emotional supports. We're going to work with our counselors on the actual systems that they have. Matter of fact, it's June 11th. Yes, June 11th, we're going to meet with the APs and guidance heads. And then on July 30th, we're going to meet with the whole guidance team as to what we've already discussed, gathering the input from our head counselors and our APs. And then we're going to put a system that's in place that doesn't overburden any one counselor. And we're going to work together as a team to address the academics, the attendance, behavior, and social emotional supports, and really utilize the systems, the supports that we have at our school on a more systematic basis. We're also, again, this goes into the October PD days. I'm so excited. We're going to talk attendance. I guess I'm the only one who's excited. That's all right. Attendance connectedness. Thank you, Candace. We're going to talk discipline, and RCOE is going to come in, and they will also speak about our foster and homeless youth and what resources that we have. So we have RCOE coming in, and several of the presenters who I personally have enjoyed learning from, who will come in October to our PD days. So that leads us to goal 3.4 to address that social emotional. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Emil.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Good evening, President Garcia, board members, Mr. Bennett, cabinet. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So when you take a look at the screen, you're going to notice a few things. I am not going to read from that. I'm just going to simply summarize this for you really quickly. I'm going to do my best here. I promise I won't be like the last time. We have 5 pillars based on MTSS and RTI that we have to establish in our foundation of what we're doing for mental health in our district. Academic success, overall flourishing of our students, equity and inclusion, prevention and early intervention, and holistic development. What we found through RTI and MTSS are 5 outcomes that have to happen for our kids. Positive social and emotional health, overall well-being and educational growth, targeted interventions and support, prioritizing social and emotional health, and holistic development of our students. So we're looking at the total student, not just simply the academic performance, but the educational performance. IDA came back out, so I'm going to throw the little spin on special ed. IDA with the reauthorization came out and said, we must provide educational support. They changed it from academic support to address the social, emotional, and behavioral needs of students. We're looking at 3 specific positions: social workers, MTSS counselors, program specialists, and looking at, 4, looking at our ERMS positions, really honing in on, when I say ERMS, education related mental health services, to really bring back that piece in terms of the behavioral interventions and the substance intervention piece of things. Any questions on my end?
Oh.
Go ahead.
when you say holistic development, what does that
Whole. So we're talking about the whole student, everything. Everything, when we talk about the whole student, it's really that wraparound approach like we did with the CARES team in a sense. So we're bringing, if a student is struggling with academics, we're gonna get them Tutor Me in a sense, right? If they're struggling in terms of mental health and well-being from that standpoint, we're gonna get them coaching with a social worker, an MTSS counselor, things of that nature. Yes. I think I know exactly what you're saying. Yes.
I go well.
Right.
And we haven't done anything with it.
Of course.
So what I want to know is,
So I can tell you a personal experience I've had when I was in a different district where we had a student that was struggling with that same aspect. And we took it from not only a mental health standpoint, but also from a standpoint of, just as you said, logistics in a sense, right? So it really all is about communication. It's communicating with the student, communicating with the team, making sure that we find a plan that we can compromise with all parties that makes people safe in a sense without violating any laws. Because there are laws protecting our students from that standpoint, right? And
Yes.
staff, I'm sorry. Yes.
So in working with RCOE, they have a couple of presentations that they've done with our administrators and our guidance counselors. We're waiting for further direction as far as how we're going to roll that out. We wanted to make sure that we armed our administrators and guidance counselors who are frontline when it comes to those types of issues with the knowledge. Now that they're armed with the knowledge, what we want to do is work with board cabinet as far as how we will address that. I think you're giving us good direction now as far as, having PE teachers and getting their input. But we're armed with the knowledge now that we're able to adequately answer any questions that they may have.
I would say the first in line would be the teachers, because it could be in a locker situation where and I don't know how they do it here, but I know where I'm at, when we're distributing locks and lockers, the kids are coming in, we just tell them, hey, go line up, and then next thing you know, they're up there, asking you, what locker do you get? You take the name down, you do whatever you do, input it, and then send it on. And so at that point, it's kind of like, well, are they caught off guard if they do it? Like, how do you, and so I'm hoping that we're having these conversations prior to anything happening. That way, when it does happen, then we know how to implement whatever protocols or plan of action that we have and discuss where everybody's kind of comfortable. And I think it's very important that every PE teacher's voice is heard and concerns are heard, because we're all different, even within the same discipline, we can have different opinions on different things, and it could be different from the girls' locker room to the boys' locker room. So, and there's issues, and it's a touchy subject. And so I just want to make sure that no one's put in a bad position, or at least we discuss almost every option. We know that stuff happens, you know what I mean? But if we can kind of minimize that, that would be very helpful, at least to me, in knowing that the district is going to be kind of supportive, and then we're not going to have the liability issues that could potentially arise without us discussing that.
So I heard your answer, and I think what I would ask is, how soon can you come back with the solution? Like a process per se. So if the situation occurs like right now, where would we send the child? Clearly, we wouldn't have them in the classroom until it's addressed. Or would we?
It's a very tricky subject in a sense, and I think the most important part of it all is that we're communicating, we're efficient in our communication, right? So when it happens, we're aware of it, we got to get all parties on the same room in a sense so we can figure out planning and plan because.
How fast would that happen?
Well, I'm available 24/7.
Right.
I have to be, right?
Right.
And so from that standpoint, when situations like this arise, we have to be available, right? And so I know we can't get teachers in and have that conversation. We can only, work with our teachers within what the union parameters are from that standpoint, but we're definitely getting as administrators.
I think the union would be very supportive in this topic.
Oh, no
I don't think
question. No,
they would be enabling the process from occurring.
Yeah, no, I think the most important facet to all this is communication.
Yes.
And I think the other most important part of this is make sure we minimize our work.
Well, I would like to see a process from you guys, at least something in writing as soon as possible, because I know Mr. Campos, since he got elected, he's been asking the same question and never got an answer back. So I would like to see that as soon as possible.
We'll make sure that we get you something.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions for me? Oh.
Generate funds from the survey. Yeah, usually that's part of the 2-pay grant, which is usually about 3,500 or so, but that does not generate. We do that every year. That was part of the, we've been doing the Healthy Kids survey. So we do a parent, we do the students, and we do the staff as well. So that's all disaggregated amongst the different LCAP goals that we have.
It was more of the drug use, more so than anything else.
So do you have a suggestion for doing that? Because we have no control over Menifee Union or Newview or Homeland, Romaland, or any of those other feeder districts. That's their prerogative, not ours.
Well, so I guess then that answers the question. We gotta go forth in the paddock.
Yeah.
I mean, I know when I made the visit, they had all kinds of things with it. It's kind of one of those things where you need to make sure that properly, that we're having
Mhm.
there. So I agree with you that they should start.
Yeah, they have band and choir there now. And they have some, yes.
And they
But I
have
understand the
after-school
question.
sports at Pinacati also.
Yep.
I get that. I'm just saying, we have a lot of incoming ninth graders that we have no control over until we see them in ninth grade. So,
Yep.
so I don't, you were talking about middle school, we don't really have a lot of input on in that regard.
Well, but we do have, yes, we do, yes, we have a plan for that. That's your other folder that we'll talk about later, but not tonight. You met the new, their team from, at the gala, and so they've done some work with us already this year. So part of that proposal is looking at, those services, which they will target all of the incoming freshmen from our feeder schools. So that is a lot of services that we're expanding in lieu of some of the reductions that we've experienced until we can kind of get everybody, some positions back on board. So we're looking to that engagement and that connection and increasing school climate and safety and all of those things to expanding their services. So I will just put this out there. I apologize. That if you, on the 12th when we come back, if you would like a presentation on what those services, because I had them break it down by school with the justification, and it's on the high end, but we can always scale back. But I know that Pinacati is a priority and Paris Lake is a priority. I mean, all of the schools are a priority. However, the funding is not coming from supplemental concentration. It's coming from Title I, the arts, music, the Prop 28, because there's a big piece in there about school culture and climate that addresses that as well. So that would be something that we can, have a further conversation on. So, yes. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. 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 And I think that, we're looking forward to, I mean, we're having leadership transition everywhere, so we're looking forward to, Ms. Jones heading back to Pinacati to help do that work that she is excellent at. So we've already had some preliminary conversations, but she is all about connecting kids. And so that process will be having all kinds of activities on campus and stuff. So we're working through that as well. Yeah. Do you have any other questions for goal 3? Oh, sorry. Or anything right now?
Okay, yeah. So under what's to come in 2024, 2025, goal
Did I
3?
get way ahead of you?
Yeah, sorry.
sorry.
A previous slide.
This one?
No, one more, back one.
That one, yes. I had a quick question with the annual Title IX training and also as well as like mandated reporter, because I know there's a lot of districts going on where it's not looking so good. A lot of districts aren't really up to code on that, and it's really important, and I don't want students being endangered by these predators. But is this training like, is it like 2 times a year? Should we do it 2 times a year? Is it just an in-house training, or are you with someone else trying to do the training? Because I think this is, a very delicate situation that needs to be addressed, and we should always be on top of it.
Yes, it's an annual training that we do with an outside lawyer, Dora Dome. She does the training. She did the training last year, and she'll work on the training for coming up. She is renowned in writing books and all on this type of, on Title IX. So it's a training that's done with our administrators that's done. If the board would like for us to expand it further, we can definitely look into that.
Is that part of the Keenan? So is there a component within Keenan?
Yes, Keenan is the mandatory for our whole staff, and this is something above and beyond the Keenan training.
I had a question about the
this is, we. Yeah. It's. Mhm. Can I- Mhm. Yes. So the consultants, because we don't know what the needs might be at the moment, so if you would look at that like almost as a placeholder, because as things come up, we just, I think, need to afford the director an opportunity to be able to reach out based on what is coming. Now, if that's not used, it gets redirected in other places. So as Liberty continues to expand, as, Dr. Cahoon continues to work in between, the academic piece and the social emotional and the chronic absenteeism, if there's things that need to come up that we need to cover that we're not anticipating, that's like a placeholder, because right now there is nothing allocated other than what could possibly happen or need in the future. So again, I leave that up to the directors to make that call as we move forward.
Obviously, one of the topics I'm going to address is safety and security training for campus supervisors. Why only 15,000? When I last left the board, my last term, we're 70,000 plus.
Okay, Candace, thank you, because the security, I know it's not my area of expertise.
I actually anticipated, because of your earlier comment, you may ask that question, so I actually looked it up. So remember, this is just what's out of supplemental concentration. I was looking in terms of discretionary and trainings. Mr. Hannon has a budget in the true general fund outside of supplemental concentration in excess of $40,000, and that's in addition to safety credits and that sort of thing that he's able to use. So.
Okay, well, eventually I would like to see the total budget that they're being given, and, and we might have to make some adjustments because we need to start taking security a little bit more seriously.
But hopefully that answers what's in here versus elsewhere.
Yep. Yep. You know what, you are on a roll, girl, so just keep
So you may recall that we increased all of the 5-hour campus supervisors up to 8 hours at the beginning of this school year that we're in. So again, because supplemental and concentration is supplemental and above, this is a legitimate expenditure that we can charge to supplemental and concentration. Always when you're looking at budgets, you want to use your most restricted dollars first. So that's the point of putting those there. Yes. You're welcome.
Lone person standing. Okay. You can, yes, thank you. Okay. All right, so we are in the home stretch, so thank you for your patience. So our LCAP Goal 4, obviously, many of you attended our gala. We definitely increased our parent participation. We increased the number of workshops that parents are attending. We don't have as many in person because people have become very comfortable doing Zoom and Google Meets, and so actually that has been working really well. We've had more participation online than we do in person, and I think that's just COVID related. People got very used to engaging online. So, but these are actual parent participants. We keep just a basic raw data of how many parents attend, whether it's back to school night, all of the different workshops across the district. So we've continually seen an increase. We're going to continue to see, we're anticipating that we'll break 13,000, especially as Liberty continues to grow. We also saw a slight increase in our parent survey. We would love to see that a little bit higher, but we did get some more feedback. our Pele, which most of you that were at the gala got to see the videos and the focus. We will continue to do this work with each of our teams. We're going to continue to focus on attendance. Attendance matters, so that is already a goal that they are probably already trying to figure out how they're going to one-up each other for next year. So we're very excited about that. We will continue our trainings and workshops. They have been very popular, and the positive parenting, these are just some of the top ones that have been the most popular as far as attendance. And so we're going to continue to expand that. We will take the, on my next slide, when we disaggregated the parent survey, we found that there are some areas that we're going to start focusing on, and I'll get to that in just a second. We're going to continue our partnerships with the City of Paris and the City of Menifee. We do a lot of mental health, career awareness, Job Shadow Day. We also, I think we play a small part this year for the 5 run, the 5K Color Fun Run. And so we'll see how we continue to partner with the City of Paris moving into next year. So those were some of our big major successes. Some of the identified needs, this is what I found. I gleaned from our parent survey, which when you look at it, and we'll be more than happy to share with Anna, we have a folder that has all of the site reports, district reports, and it talks everywhere from the core module to substance abuse, bullying, diversity, facilities. So we'd be more than happy to share that folder so you can look at each school has their own specific key indicators. And so we can share that. So for my piece right here was really just looking at the key indicators from our parent survey, from the 550 that had replied. Some of the big pieces that had materialized were parent involvement, school supports for students, fairness. I'm going to put these back on. I can't really see that far. Fairness, rule, clarity, and respect for diversity, substance abuse, or substance use disorder, bullying, and facilities. So if you have an opportunity to get the reports, they will also list the questions within each of these different categories that prompted the response. And so if I can just take a minute and just go over on the parent involvement, what they, based on the responses, the school actively seeks input from parents. School encourages parents to actively participate. Parents feel welcome to participate at this school. So those are some of the subcategories on the parent involvement. So, it just doesn't, I know, it just doesn't help. Oh, thank you. So those are some of the categories. Oh, I went really fast. I'm going to put that down. So those are some of the categories that through our PAC meetings, through DAYPAC, through DLAC, that we're going to revisit some of this information and really get down and talk to the parents as how we can come up collectively and collaboratively up with ways to increase parent involvement in those ways. The school supports for students, this was reflecting school is a safe place for my child. School motivates children. What school adults care about, school has adults who really care about students, opportunities for meaningful student participation, communication with parents about schools, teachers responsive to child's social emotional needs, and school provides parents with advice and resources to support my child's social and emotional needs. That all fell under that particular category. Again, kind of echoing what you were all just sharing. Fairness, rule, clarity, respect for diversity, the 3 that was mentioned here. School enforces school rules equally. School treats all students with respect. School promotes respect of cultural beliefs and practices. When we look at substance use disorders and bullying, these were substance use problems, student alcohol and drug use, student vaping and e-cigarette use, school disorder, harassment, or bullying of students. So this kind of goes back to the work that we would be doing, kind of reconvening and kind of our CARES team and all of that support. And then facilities, that was just one comment. School has clean and well-maintained facilities and properties that scored low. And so those are the areas that we are going to take a look at this next year, early on in the year, so that we can develop some communications and some updates and maybe some education for our parents and our community around these particular subjects. What we found also through our meetings is our parents feel like they have communication overload. And so we have a lot of information that, as many of you know, if you have children that are in schools and you're on an app, or you're getting all kinds of phone calls or notifications. And so that is always a huge complaint from our parents, is that we just get so much, because whether it's the teachers or it's the admin or it's district. And so, and I'm hoping that when we get to Parent Square, which we are adopting that platform, that we'll be able to maybe do a little bit more monitoring and a little bit better timing when communication is rolled out. But that's navigating all of the school sites and the district as far as notifying. So that was one of the feedbacks that has perpetually always comes up every year. We will continue to work with the site administration and support the school. So we'll be meeting with them probably in the next 2 weeks to kind of plan out potential workshops, trainings, and conferences for our parents to attend to build capacity with them. So moving forward, so we pretty much have the same, oh yes. Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's what I read off of. Yep. Oh, that includes our alt ed. So that includes our alternative, Paris Lake and SOLA. Yep. Yes, yes, within our district. Yep. I can get that for you. Yep. Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. On the 12th, I'd be more than happy, or in between, I can give you a disaggregated report, but I know that the surveys are offered in Spanish as well. Yeah, for sure. So I can just send that to you if you'd like. Just a,
I was just going to say, we also did a separate DLAC. So we also did a separate DLAC feedback survey that went out to all parents of English learners, and so that went out as well. So is that included? It's separate.
That's a separate number. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. And we can get that data for you as well.
Which I will be connecting with him to see what that feedback was. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. 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 Yeah. Yeah. It all ties together, yes. Yeah, yeah. And I appreciate that. Yeah, and I appreciate that too, because we, not only is it CABE, we have I think it's like the 3 or 4 day, it's usually in Long Beach, and then the county offers a 1 day just for parents, and so we send our parents and our community members to both of those. We also sent probably about 25 parents to attend the CASA. CAASA, and that's for our African American families. So we've done that for the first time. We'll continue to do that as well. So, and I know I'll get down to it as I kind of wrap up, just kind of on a side note, tying together the community schools and the work that the Equity and Action Committee has been doing. So we'll continue to reach out to all of our subgroups and enable them and offer these opportunities for them as well. So we'll continue to do that. Okay. All right. Okay, so kind of same for actions. I think we've just kind of reworded them to be more inclusive and broad as we continue to move forward. What's to come, obviously we're going to continue to celebrate our parents in our communities. Our members do our gala as well as our Parent Involvement Day and National Parent Volunteer Week. We're going to continue working with the City of Paris and Menifee to engage in that collaboration with opportunities not only for our parents and community, but for our students as well. One thing that Mr. Tippy and I will be working on is we're going to host an orientation for our EL newcomers, and we're going to offer that at each of the different schools. And I believe, Charles, you may have touched on the number of students that are coming. It's usually a cohort of maybe about how many newcomers at each school?
Paris High School, about 75, Pinacate, about.
So what we're going to do in that regard, we are going to bombard them with resources. We're going to have the site personnel, the counselors. We're going to help support them with as far as resources. If they need clothing, if they need backpacks, if they need shoes, if they need glasses, if they need any support whatsoever, we want to get them feeling comfortable with the school that they're going to be attending. So we're going to work with the site admin so that when they leave this orientation, they're going to feel comfortable. They're going to have a tour of the school. They're going to meet some of the staff and some of the counselors and the administrators. So we want to embrace them moving forward because it is very scary for them to come in and try to navigate our system. It's intimidating for anybody, but we want to make sure that they are set up before school starts. So we're excited about doing that, and that's going to be our first rollout, and that'll be probably the end of July before school starts because we want to make sure that they have everything that they need to get started. Obviously, I think I mentioned Pele is going to be Attendance Matters. We're going to continue to focus on attendance. And then, of course, Parent Square. So that's what's coming new for us in our department. We are small but mighty, okay? We don't have we have a pretty decent budget, but most of it's personnel. We do have some money set aside for workshops, trainings to pay for that. If we have childcare, that's offered as well. But we haven't really utilized that, but we're going to keep it in the budget because we never know if we do need to offer that when parents and community members come to our on-site workshops and trainings. So most of this really just encompasses salaries and benefits and then the trainings and workshops. So that we have our budget and then we have our estimated actuals. I'm looking at you, Mr. Blake, move on. And then this is our anticipated budget for next year. Any questions? Thank you. All right, so we are wrapping this up. So the last one is our current goal 5. So we were identified for differentiated assistance by the county in our areas of students with disabilities and students experiencing homelessness. As you can see, I'll go straight to the bottom. We are no longer in differentiated assistance for these groups. We have made enough change, or there's been enough status and change to be able to move the needle enough to where the county says not that we are not going to pay attention to them, but we are no longer in differentiated assistance, which that requires us working with the county and that two-way support, which Dr. Cahoon had mentioned. A lot of what she's doing on the academic side is addressing the math and academic needs, especially at Pinacate as well. So we made enough progress in these different areas which we were identified for 23-24. So it was able to move the needle enough for us to get out of differentiated assistance. So with that being said, we have a new goal 5, and that's the equity multiplier. This is specifically for Paris Lake High School and Scholar Plus online learning. This is new money that's come from the state to us, and it is about, they refer to it as the non-stability rate, but I kindly refer to it as mobility rate. These are the kids that are coming and going. So when there's a high percentage of those, that school has been earmarked to receive this equity multiplier money. And I will just say, because I thought there might be an opportunity for any of our schools to get that, but they would have to have a high mobility rate. And most of our high schools don't experience that as much as continuation or alt ed. So mostly for the state of California, most of this money is being channeled or has been earmarked for alt ed settings. And so this is where this money is lying. So we have, yes, they have, and I'm going to round. Yeah, there's, and I'm going to get to the next page, which is kind of the breakdown, the financial breakdown. But we had to create a goal 5. This was part of our mandate on the program side to address the equity multiplier. And because Paris Lake and Scholar Plus scored in performance level red in these areas which focus on college and career indicator, which Dr. Cahoon had just talked about some of the work that she'll be doing over there. This is why Paris Lake and Scholar Plus are receiving the equity multiplier dollars, because of this data. And so with that being said, there was a pot of money that came with that. That's probably not the right term, but there was money that came with that. And so with that dollar, and now it comes every year. It comes every year until the state, I think, decides, well, I'm going to say that it's going to come every year in the sense that the qualifying, the eligibility is based on that mobility rate. I anticipate that the lake and whatever happens with the future of Scholar Plus will keep generating those dollars for us. But the negative part is that we don't get notification of how much we get for that current year until like February. That's how far the state is behind in their allocation. No, it's okay. Yeah, we are like a year behind. Yeah, it's crazy, but with this pot of money that we anticipate we'll be getting and it's going to be based on that mobility rate. We have goal 5, and we have 3 actions within each of those. So how we are planning on breaking down in use of those dollars is talking a little bit about what Mr. Alzabeidi had talked about, is using those funds for ERMS, a social worker, and then an FTE and the 14 satellite sections. So those dollars are going to, hopefully, as we move forward, that we'll be able to fill these positions with this particular pot of money. These are services that will be earmarked and targeted for Paris Lake and all of the students that will be attending the satellite campuses, or those students from the satellite campuses that might come back to Paris Lake. So we're going to have the social-emotional piece kind of wrapped into this particular goal. I think as Emil had shared, is that if we can change the trajectory of how kids feel and how they are connected and engaged, that everything else will improve, which is the student outcomes, the performance, the attendance, the graduation rates, the A through G completion. But we really need to target, especially for those, and I know, Mr. Stafford, you spend a lot of time at the lake and you really kind of connect with the kids and the type of kids that are there. They come with a lot of issues. And so in order for us to address that so that they can be successful in their educational career or post-secondary, we need to address what is really at the root cause of their issues. And it's the social-emotional piece, the behavior, or the credit recovery, or just lack of resources and services. So this money, we will keep you posted, and the services throughout the year, as we do with all of our other LCAP goals. So that is our new goal. Yes?
Ms. Martin, I didn't know if this was proper to talk about this at this time, but I see in your presentation it is. Scholar Plus, Paris Lake, you need how many credits to graduate?
185.
130. Okay, and with Scholar Plus, you need how many credits? How many?
225.
Okay. Is this occurring where Scholar Plus is handling the kids part of the year, then at the end of the year you dump them into Paris Lake so they meet the credit requirements and graduate?
I do not.
Okay. Thank you for an honest answer.
I do not know that
Okay.
one.
The other problem is Scholar Plus was supposed to be for our high-performing students. It turned into a hiding place for disciplinary problems and other kids that didn't even qualify to be in that program, therefore dragging the program down. And then, of course, then you have the other switch going on. So I don't know, what is our plan to deal with that? Are we just going to keep turning our head, or are we going to try to straighten that out?
To somebody that's probably has a little bit more information on that. Yeah.
As I shared with the board in my weekly memo, we came across some issues with that program, in that the large majority of the students were not experiencing academic success. When we did a deeper dive, we did uncover, just as you said, that most of the students were there because they had discipline problems, they had attendance problems, and/or they had severe academic problems.
We're talking Paris Lake or
So,
Scholar
yes,
Plus?
Scholar
Okay.
Plus.
So they shouldn't have been there in the
So they
first
should
place?
not, it was an incorrect referral.
Yes.
So what we're working on now is to develop a referral process so that we can have a committee look at the students that are being referred to make sure that they're meeting the program requirements, setting some criteria down for what the expectations are. And part of what we discovered was that as it is a long-term independent study program, there are requirements for regular review of academic progress, which is how we collect our ADA. So as soon as we start seeing that a student's not making their academic goals, the state requires that there becomes a meeting with the family and the student to discuss, other seat time options. That didn't occur at all this year. I'm not familiar with last year. I only took this year's data. So we're plan on going forward with trainings on what that should look like. Unfortunately, we're not sure if the teachers and the administrators of the program understood what the legal requirements were for ADA collection and the notification of parents when students aren't being successful.
I
So
think
it's
you
a
had
training
some
issue.
staff changeover, and some understood what, the requirements were, some didn't, and maybe the teachers didn't get some ongoing supervision they should have gotten. So, okay, I understand what's going on, and I'm glad you just put it to me straight, because that way we can get to the solution part, and that's what I want to hear, basically. I have another question, but I'll ask Diane, because it's another, it's kind of a serious question.
Okay.
Okay, we get a report. You guys write up reports from your department. And I'm deeply concerned about some occurrences within the district, teacher incidents. In the last report, very serious crime was committed. Teacher on, it was out of the JROTC, so maybe that'll give you, I don't want to put the facts out there, but you should know what I'm talking about.
Well, I don't know that was under my.
Maybe it isn't. So,
Yeah.
okay. That's why I was hesitant to
Okay.
even ask about the other ones,
Okay.
until it came up.
Okay.
But this is, it's just eating at me, what I read, and it's not the first time. So what kind of restraints do we have on the teachers, the ROTC instructors that come in? And I'm not talking about CMI. They have
Right,
nothing
yeah.
to do with this. This was at Paloma, and this has happened before, teacher misconduct. And I feel like it gets swept under the rug. I realize the legal process takes a long time. For indictments and the whole deal, it does take a while, and people
Right.
tend to forget.
Yes, I have.
But when you have the parent involvement, and they're going to turn around and find out, well, you knew this was going on and you didn't tell us. It's just as much as sweeping it under the rug. So it's concerning, because it's not the first time it's happened. I've seen teachers under our watch. We've released teachers for conduct much less. And I'm just really concerned about how we can immediately police that. That's something we shouldn't wait on. And as I say, this may not be your question, so.
I know, I think I'm going to defer to Cabinet on that one.
Okay.
And I know HR is not here, so I would say that I'm going to defer to Cabinet on that
Okay,
one, yeah.
so I'm not
I
mentioning
appreciate
any names, just.
No, that's okay. No, I
just
totally understand.
Questions that, the information's there. We get it on our report, so.
Yep.
We'll have to ask that question maybe at the next meeting, or
Yep.
that gives a little warning, it's a little time to
Somebody's
investigate.
taking copious notes right now.
Yes.
To get back to you on
Okay.
that one.
Those concerns, and Mrs. Vallejo had really kind of voiced sort of the same concern. And when I read the report, I felt the same way. I said, we're going to have to do a little better job screening, or not a little, but this was upsetting. So,
Yeah.
okay.
I do.
This is probably not your question either.
I'll take it.
You just got caught at the
That's
mic.
okay, I'm right here. I got a whole team behind me and
They're
to
going to
decide.
bring it to us closed session next week. next
Okay.
board meeting. I just
That's,
asked.
that's great, that's great. So this one probably, I'm pretty sure isn't your question.
Okay.
This is gonna be a more Candace's, and this may not be the time for it. So, before I spoke about cross-training and overtime, stipends, things like that. And I've known it existed for quite a while. I've spoke about it before. Nothing's ever been, come forward, nobody's come forward in anything. Let's just look at a scenario. Campus supervisor comes to work, he's working 8 hours. 6 hours into his shift, he walks away from his shift to go coach a team, which he's getting paid a stipend for. So he's double dipping. In other professions, people lose their jobs over this. And I'll say that, and I don't care who scrambles or gets uncomfortable, because this cannot be legal. You cannot be getting paid for one thing and getting a stipend and going working somewhere else. And I don't know why everyone just continues to ignore it. The only reason I get, and I understand, is it is so hard to get coaches and screen people and get these people in. But that doesn't make it right. So when you give that opportunity to one, and you might have a secretary. She might be a former softball player. You might have, any sport where there's an employee, they can't just jump up from their desk and go play that sport. So I'm going to direct that more towards Candace, because she's heard this before.
And unfortunately, I think that's a question we need to address to Human Resources. Maybe we can get that information to you. I have heard you talk about
You've heard me say this before.
I do agree with you.
Okay.
It's double dipping. A person cannot be in paid status for two different roles and assignments.
Exactly.
It is a long-standing, even preceding me coming to the district. I think
It's
you know that.
one of the things we've done wrong for so long that I can't sign my name to anything like that anymore. Before it was you weren't paying them equally. It was the union is so weak they were about to give their own seniority away. So when you the district took and looked at it like a victory. Hey, we got over on them. We took $1 away from them, and it was disgusting to me. And in these particular incidents I'm describing, if I weren't to say this right now, it would never come up. And I know it wouldn't. And I used to say, well, who was responsible? Who was in charge? Whose job was that? And still don't get an answer. I've asked for several things that we don't get an answer for. And that's the problem, because when you talk about equity, you can't just say it and not live it. And I'm not here to scold you in particular.
No, I'm just standing here.
Yeah, this has just existed long before. But, we have all these budgets and we have all these situations, but in some categories I don't see, well, where is the training being for the teacher situation? What do we have that addresses that? Where is that budgeted for? And as you say, you put line items there for placeholders. Well, that's just, okay, well, you're going to use that money somewhere else. You're just not telling us where you're going to use it. And I don't particularly care for that practice either. So keep those things in mind and don't take it personal, but the obvious is the obvious. And I can support you if you tell me what's done, what is our plan, what are we going to do, what did we do? Because if we turn around and next thing we've got a $5 million lawsuit, everybody's going, oh man, that doesn't do us any good. Puts us right back in the hole. So, and we've seen other districts do this. So this is somewhat of a speech to you to say, hey, let's not hold certain people accountable. Let's hold everybody accountable, because our students deserve it. So.
And I agree with that. Speaking what you and Ms. Vallejo talked about with sexual abuse and molestation claims. There's a number of districts, one really close by,
I know,
that are going through that. It's a huge budget impact, especially with the laws that allow repression of memories to come, back. That was the source of the change in law recently, right? So it is a huge concern relative to the coaching that you brought up initially.
Yeah.
I know I made a note of it, probably Joe and Grant made a note as well. And so I propose let us circle back and get you that information as well as anything else,
Yeah,
of course.
there's no solution, easy solution, but there is a solution.
There's always a solution.
There is a
but
solution.
It might not be easy.
And everybody's not going to be comfortable. Everybody's going to say, well, here's Tony. He's sounding off about this, that. Well, that's what I'm supposed to be here for, And I just feel like we're going to have to bring things into open session so everybody is aware and may have information that we need to help us, and we can all get there. So, and thank you.
Thank you
I'm
for
sorry.
saying it wasn't directed at me. I
No, it
appreciate
wasn't.
that.
It was directed at no one personal in the room, and Diane just got caught at the mic. So,
No, and I
okay.
had, to follow up, I guess, on Tony's, because to follow up on Tony's point, and I didn't even think about it, and I'm glad he brought that up, but then when my wheels started to spin and the liability piece, now on the accountability piece, is that something that's in the purview of the athletic director? Because if you're the athletic director and you know that you have a classified employee or a certificated employee who's coaching, and well, wait a minute, they're supposed to be, they've got, PE, and I've seen it done a lot of times in PE where, they go off to coach and someone else is watching their kids. But it creates a liability. Now someone gets hurt, and now it's like, well, why was that even person there? They were supposed to be over here doing this, but is that something that our athletic directors are at least kind of overseeing? And I know they can't be everywhere at any given time because there's sports everywhere, but it's something that that's extremely important, and obviously the double dipping piece is a concern, but I think the liability piece is one that's of greater concern.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. As Tony mentioned, excuse me, Mr. Stafford, we go way back. So.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
As Mr. Stafford mentioned, this goes back, at least a couple of decades, maybe more. So I don't want to stand here and say, yeah, the athletic director should have been, doing that when this goes back, 20 or more years. So if you'll allow us the opportunity to look into this comprehensively and get back with you, I think I would propose that's the best solution at this moment in time.
Yes, that's fair. That's
Okay.
fair. So
All right.
it's brought to your attention,
Yes.
and that's
And
what's
so, and I
needed.
had
Okay.
one last LCAP.
Yes.
And I know this is something that, so here's my concern. And just so people know, whenever I'm on my phone, it's usually because I'm calculating something, or in this particular time, I hadn't read the weekly report. So when Tony was mentioning that, I was like, whoa, what did I miss? So I just want at least you guys to know as a public, I'm not blowing you off. I'm trying to get information that I have that I didn't have. And so when that came up, that's why I just want to be transparent about what I'm doing. I'm not checking my fantasy team, although that's a different thing. But anyways, so here's my concern in terms of wrapping up a lot of the LCAP stuff. I had a conversation with a friend who I considered an expert in EL. When I had told him that we had, because the statistics came out, Grant had sent me, I think in the last weekly report, that we have 1,500 EL students. We have a population of approximately 10 grand, so 15%, which obviously are generating, a significant amount of money in the services. So I asked my buddy, I said, hey, what do you think, how many paras do you think we have? We have 1,500 EL students, and he's okay, 1,500. He goes, if you went low end, 100, one per 100, 15-ish. He goes, but then, it depends on ones and twos, because it could be anywhere from 15 to 25 based on the ones and twos. He said, but I'll just say, 15. And I took his number and I said, okay, we have 4 comprehensive, we have a middle school. I said, okay, so at your rate, 15, that would be 3 per site. If you just distributed it, just simple math. And so when I told him, I said, he goes, how many do you have? And I said, 0. He was shocked. And so for me, that's an extreme concern. And I know that we went through a lot of stuff. That's why I was just kind of going to wait until the end. I think, when we're looking at this budget and, we'll approve it, but I think for me, there's a great concern that we don't, EL teachers they're different, you know what I mean? And they have a heart and a passion for their population, and they want to do their best. They're not miracle workers. If we're not providing them with the supports that they need, they burn out. Because there's no way, I mean, most of them have a conscience. They love their group that they're working with, and they know that they can't give them everything that the student deserves. And that's why the paras usually step in there, because they can give them that additional support. Maybe they're working with the group over here, and then but they know that hey, can you work with these kids, doing this? And it depends on, I don't know how it really looks at the high school level. I do know from the middle school perspective on kind of how that works, being involved in the process. So my task or my request is that we really look into this, because there's no way that we're going to get the success that we want, not only that we want, but that those students deserve. Those students deserve to have supports because they're generating a lot of funds. And so I don't know how that all calculates. I mean, that's something obviously Candace is going to have to figure out, and but she's, but anyways, I just wanted to mention it because it's just something that I think moving forward, and I know that we're going to be having, a new group coming in, but it's something I think that we need to prioritize. The EL population is vast. It could be, multiple, it's not just Hispanic or Latino students, but it's one of those things that we have to do a better job at providing the supports for them. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of these things that we're reading on these charts and these scores and things being down, they're going to be alleviated by that. By just knowing that those kids have the support that they need, it's going to motivate them. They're going to taste success because someone's going to give them that little bit of extra time. They're going to have an extra adult who's going to be able to build a relationship and be a part of their life. And a lot of times that's very important because they see them as someone, hey, when I go to school, I have my teacher who cares about me, who's gonna do this and the other, but then I have Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so who helps me get through my day, making sure that they're on top of me, making sure I'm, doing all the things that I need to do. And so, my hope and task is that obviously we'll, try to approve whatever we have, budget-wise going forward, but that we do definitely look at the numbers and we look at, potentially modifying or amending it moving forward, because I just don't see how we can continue to move forward and be content with the success that we have, which you can see there's a room for a lot of improvement. And I think one place where we start is to dump money into that. So, or no, I shouldn't say dump, but to pour money into those students.
Pot, yes.
For those, yeah. So anyways, that was kind of the one thing that I just wanted to make sure that I expressed, because when I saw that and thought about that and had conversations, it kind of bummed me out. And again, I don't know all the numbers and how it works, but I do think that we need to put some emphasis on that.
And I know Mr. Tippy kind of went over the current supports. I mean, if we want to go back in history, we had EL paras back before we had the last financial crisis, which I think was in 2017, 14. And then we had, I can't remember on years past a certain time, but we had them at one time. And so due to budget reductions, those paras got moved into special ed. And then fast forward, we started looking at, because of the budget situation, we had to look at other alternative supports, and I know Mr. Tippy had shared some. So our first attempt was really to engage our AVID tutors, which are college-bound students in college that have been trained, and they're all in newcomers classes. So we can take a look, if you just afford us some time when we come back, to take a look at that data for our newcomers, and then I'm going to defer to Mr. Tippy on this as it's his area of expertise, and Dr. Cahoon to look at the data after the summer and after we get the results in to see where we are. And we can always take a look at other options, as far as if that's the direction that we need to go. But we just want to, I think, just give us the gift of time so that we can kind of share and then get some go deep into the data and then share with you.
No, and that's all I ask. I mean, I know you're not a miracle worker either, so we're working with funds and limited funds. So, thank you.
Some limitations. One more. Okay, so I am not going to do this justice, but this is outside of LCAP, but I just wanted to provide just an update with our Equity is Caring Committee. As you all know, we were blessed to be awarded with the Community Schools Grant. Part of the Equity Committee is going to be part of that stakeholder group. So these are just some of the highlights throughout the year. Obviously, spending some time with training and building capacity with our APAC and DAPAC group, and that alignment with our BSUs on campus was a huge priority, as well as development of the ethnic studies throughout the year. So that continues to be a focus as we move into next year. I know that Mr. Bennett has continued to work with Dr. McNair in finishing up the blueprint for equity. We are going to continue to monitor our Healthy Kids Survey and our Panorama Survey results as they continue to come in. So we'll be reporting out on that in the fall when all of that is disaggregated. A big part of that is the CSACE plan, and that's addressing some of the gaps with our special ed population as well. And then just continuing our connection with our parents and our groups on campus, so the DAPAC, BSU, and APAC, so that they is vertical alignment as we move forward. And I know I did not do that justice, because Dr. McNair's not here, but I wanted to make sure that I just kind of tied that together and looped it in, because part of this committee work, which encompasses teachers and students and district office staff and administrators, it's very comprehensive. And so as we move into the community schools work, they will be a part, they were written in as part of the key stakeholders, as part of that oversight committee as we move forward and develop the community schools.
Now, will we have, because if possible, if I can get a list of, or so that we know who's on the equity team.
Sure.
But also I know that from my understanding of the community schools grant, it's to make sure that now it's kind of a new process.
Yeah.
And so we could be bringing in new, obviously the existing.
Oh, yes.
But to
it's
bring
not-
in new
they're just gonna play
stakeholders.
yeah, there is a lot of community that needs to come in
Right.
from the county, from just our local resources, from the city, both, Paris and Menifee. So it is not going to just be solely them as the oversight committee. We have, as you know, when we visited, there's a lot of stakeholders that need to be involved in that process. So they're going to make up a portion of it.
Right. And then they'll probably be part of the steering committee that
Yeah, yep.
goes from
yes.
there. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So wrapping it up, so our next steps, obviously, we're taking the feedback. If there's anything specific that you would like us to change or address before the final board approval on June 12th, please let us know. So if we need to make any modifications at this time. So right now, this is just information. And so any feedback between now and the time that we have to post for the next board meeting, we will take back and revise as needed. So the plan is moving forward, hearing none, or if there is none over the next week or so before we have to post this draft. And just know that the county is looking at our fix-its. So there might be some really minor, and I'm talking like parentheses or dots or periods, or there might be a metric that might be off, with transpose number. It's something that is not going to significantly impact the LCAP that you're reading right now. And I'll be more than happy to share whatever additional feedback or corrections that we need to do. The county should get back to me this week. So other than that, that concludes our presentation.
And actually, any comments and things we need it by the end of the week.
Yeah, I don't know when
Because the board meeting's next week.
Safety and security training for security.
Okay.
I need to see that budget increase by a lot.
Okay. Well, and I think I'll defer to Candace too, because I know that that's just a supplemental, that's part of our supplemental concentration. So, yeah, we can totally do that. Okay. Yeah. I hear you. Yes. We will make that change. That will not be a huge significant change as far as the approval process from the county. It's just moving the dollars within that budget for Goal 3. Yep.
Diane, what was the grant that we just got today?
Oh, yes.
Nobody mentioned that.
I know. Well, we're doing LCAP, but I
Okay.
mean, it's the Golden State Pathways Grant. So we didn't get the full $2 million. We got 1.75.
546, I think.
Yeah. So I think that will be a collective conversation because that has a timeline on it. And so I know that we were trying to figure out, do we maybe start with 4 counselors for 2 years, or do we do 2 counselors for 4 years, because we have 4-year. That's the life of the grant. And so that will be a conversation with Cabinet and I think you all as a board in which direction. We just know as far as the sustainability that our goal is to get them enrolled into the Medi-Cal billing so that we can build our sustainability budget after, whether it's the 2 years or 4 years. I will go on the record as saying I think that we should do 4 counselors for 2 years, and that will allow us time to be able to build back the Medi-Cal billing. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay.
Sorry if I
All right, thank you.
overstepped or spoke, but there you go.
On the grants, sometimes I think the confusion comes as to what the money can be used for and not used for.
Yeah.
And that's where the public and the board, and everybody has a different opinion of what can be done
Well,
with
I know
money.
from my point of view, as somebody who oversees most of the grants, is, yeah, we have parameters and compliance, and each one is earmarked for specific reasons. And so this particular one, the Golden State, was written, and it's from the Career Technical Education Office. And so the way I wrote the grant was very similar to the equity multiplier in addressing the needs of students' emotional and social well-being in order for them to be able to make good post-secondary choices, and also to improve student outcomes and performance. And so I started at the basics, just like we need to help figure out what's happening in our kids' lives. What's the root cause of them not coming to school, not completing A through G, not completing graduation, underperforming. And so the way I wrote the grant was to address that baseline first, and that's why we're able to get that MTSS, that counselor in there to address that. Part of the requirements that I will say is that in that meeting and that work that they do is that they have to meet and work with the students on a post-secondary plan. They have to talk about college and or career after high school. So in addition to addressing the root cause of some of their concerns that they have and some of the challenges, part of that work has to include CTE. So I was very happy about that too. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
no, I had, again, it was just something kind of, I just want to make sure that we're clear in understanding. So my understanding is we approve the LCAP as of the 12th, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we can amend it moving forward at any given point. Now, in order to amend it, in other words, I've obviously addressed, I think everybody's addressed concerns that are going to shift the numbers and hopefully increase balances here and there. But what I want to know is, so when we're presented with what we're approving, are we given actual? So I want to know, okay, if we're looking at 35 million, did we spend in the budget up to 35 million, or did we spend 32 with kind of a $3 million cushion to kind of, because stuff happens, yeah, carry over, whatever it is, so that we kind of have an idea of what exactly we're approving? And then if there's room to amend it and to add services, add paras, add increased security, cut here, cut there, that way when we look things over, and that, because what I don't want to see is, okay, no, well, you know, and this is what it almost felt like what Grant was saying was, no, once it's approved, that's it. It's moving forward. It's a 3-year plan, because I'm pretty sure that's not. It's an ongoing, we're reviewing it every year. Obviously, money's going to come in, money's going to come out. Some money's spent, some money isn't. Sometimes we overspend in an area, underspend in another one. But I just want to make sure that we're clear, I'm clear, that we're approving it kind of temporarily. I mean, it's approval, but then it could be amended. I shouldn't say temporary. It's approved. RCOE looks at it, and then we can come back and amend it once we see if there's room to play with for other things.
So it goes, and I'm going to let Candace is going to, shortly, she's going to go over the budget portion of it, and she'll probably explain in a little bit more detail. But just like the SIPSAs, it is a 1-year plan, so we're committing that this is what we're going to do. But like our SIPSA, as things change, but that's going to take a greater conversation. You monitor your student outcomes, your performance. You make changes as you go. You reallocate in different areas. And so we are able to do that under the guise, because if you look at our goals, actions, and services, those are what we're doing. How we allocate the money, we can move in between our LCAP goals to reposition things. And then at the end of the year, if we do something like that, then part of this process when we do the annual update is we inform the board that if we reallocated money from this goal to this goal to address this need, we also have to reflect that in our annual update in DTS, which is what you're looking at, to let the county know that we've made that decision throughout the year. So it's a justification if there's a significant difference, because we are proving what we're seeing here. But for example, Mr. Garcia, you want to see more in that line item for security. We can do that before Friday, whatever the deadline is. Anything else after that, we can look and see where our priorities have changed. We just have to account for it at the end of the year. Oh no, please do.
That was a great explanation, but maybe just on a more simplistic basis, what whether, it doesn't matter what budget we're talking about, what fund, down to what resource, including supplemental concentration. A budget is what we know at that moment in time. We're projecting revenue, we're anticipating expenditure, so we can always change any budget, right? When it comes to supplemental and concentration, we are basing that revenue based on certain factors for next year that are at this moment our very best guess. It's including the 1.07% COLA. It's assuming what our unduplicated pupil percentage is going to be. It's assuming what our average daily attendance is going to be. And so any of those factors could change the revenue number up or down. Even if it stayed exactly the same, board priorities and direction can change, and we can always make those changes. You know, to a degree, if you commit to something, contractually or, employee compensation-wise, we can't, just on a dime, turn and retract that. But for the most part, what you're saying is accurate. You're proving it as of this moment in time.
So basically, you're saying that there could be potentially a reserve, that it's not all spent because you don't know. It could go up or down. And
yeah, and I think you were mentioning, we've got to go through and finish this year. You weren't using these words, but we've got to go through and prepare our unaudited actuals. We have estimated actuals done right now. Closing the books is maybe more of a lay way to say that. So everything is constantly changing. We're staying up to speed in terms of that as projections and both on the revenue and the expenditure side, if that helps.
Any other questions? I mean, you can ask anytime. Okay, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm turning it over to Candace. Oh, okay. I think we are good to go. Okay. Thank you.
All right. No more discussion, correct? All right. The public hearing regarding the Local Control Accountability Plan and Annual Update for 2024-25 is now closed at 7:34 p.m. There is a motion by Mr. Nelson and a second by Mr. Campos. Make sure, hold on. To receive for review and consideration as part of the first reading, the Local Control and Accountability Plan and Annual Update for the 2024-25 school year. Please vote.
We're going to go ahead and let the Ed Services people take off. We have a long week, so get some rest because we have graduations coming up.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you.
You all did a great job, too. Thank you.
Item 9.1 is a 5-0 vote. Item 9.2, business, public hearing regarding adoption of the 2024-25 district budget. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing to receive comments regarding the 2024-25 district budget?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. The public hearing regarding the 2024 district budget is now open at 7:35 p.m. Business Services will provide a presentation at this time.
All right. Well, you got the meat of everything in the supplemental and concentration, the LCAP presentation, but we do want to do a brief. I was joking earlier, but it really won't be 2.5 hours like LCAP was. That's really the important piece in the direct services. So I'm going to take the first part on the state budget, and then Mimi will come and wrap it up with as the factors within the state budget are impacting and how they play out in our district budget. So I want to start with just briefly a state budget update, and I know I included a little bit of this in the weekly update as well, but as you know, or probably know, on May 10th, Governor Newsom released the May revision, which is his proposed budget for the state budget for 24-25. Included in that was the same funding maneuver that was proposed in his January version or proposal for the budget. It's been a big week last week. A couple of important things happened. On May 27th, the governor and CTA reached a two-party agreement on Proposition 98, and I'll go into this just a little bit more in next slide, or a next slide. But this is an alternative to the governor's Proposition 98 maneuver proposal, and it does continue to include internal borrowing. Then on May 29th, the Senate and Assembly agreed to a joint legislative proposal also for next year's state budget. Now, it is important to note Governor Newsom has yet to agree to that spending plan, and then we'll need to continue negotiations with the legislature. So I pointed out those two bullets, the two-party agreement as well as the legislative proposal, just so that you know that they're happening. But our district budget continues to, just as it always has been, built on that last set of data assumptions that we have, which is the May revision, the major components of the May revision. So themes for the governor's May revision. Governor Newsom was tasked with many budget deficits to resolve this year, 23-24 last year, and then the year ahead of us. Outside of education, he proposes significant spending cuts to governmental operations, reductions to programs, and pauses of new investments. But luckily, K-14 education continues to be shielded from ongoing programmatic reductions. How does he do that? The governor uses a combination of Proposition 98 rainy day funds and the funding maneuver, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Those two linchpins to shield K-14 education from the effects of a softening economy. So real briefly on Proposition 98, I will say that, you might imagine May Revise comes out and I attend a lot of workshops, webinars, that kind of thing, just trying to digest, and not just me, other people as well, but I heard Proposition 98 introduced. Proposition 98 is normally a bit of a sleeper issue, and I thought that was funny, but I guess budget humor. But Proposition 98 is really the #1 issue in the state budget this year. Significant disparities between budgeted and actual general fund revenues. Those create problems in the education budget, both at the state and the local level. We're experiencing a lot of revenue volatility, particularly for 22-23, 23-24, as it relates to the Proposition 98 minimum guarantee. If you look at this chart in the bottom right-hand corner, you don't have to study all the numbers, but it's really just for illustrative purposes. I borrowed this from School Services of California and their May revision workshop that they did. And you can see across the 3-year budget window, because remember Proposition 98 looks at a 3-year period, the current year, the previous year, and the year to come. And so over that 3-year budget window, Proposition 98 decreases by $3.8 billion, the largest reduction affecting 23-24. To put that in context, though, from the June Budget Act last year to the May revise this year, there's a reduction in the guarantee of $15.5 billion across those 2 years, 22-23 and 23-24, and we'll talk just a little bit more about that. So, calling this the 22-23 conundrum. You may know that Proposition 98 spending consumes nearly 40% of the state general fund revenues, and the 22-23, the issue we're talking about here, the 22-23 appropriation above the revised minimum guarantee in the May revision creates a significant dilemma. And so you can see this chart here, also borrowed from School Services. They allow us to do this as school districts. And so you can see that bar on the left there, the 23-24 enacted state budget. So, just a little less than 12 months ago, today, the budget was enacted with 107.3 million. I'm sorry, that's in millions, so billion. I said that right at first. The governor's budget proposed that to drop to $98.3 billion, and then the May revision, another drop of $97.5 million. So what does the governor propose to do with that? And this is what we've been referring to. You've probably talked about the funding maneuver for 22-23 as it relates to Prop 98. So the Legislative Analyst's Office has dubbed the governor's plan the maneuver, and they've also called it bad fiscal policy. There's also a lot of Proposition 98 hawks, so to speak, out there that have been questioning the legality of what the governor was proposing. So from January to May, the amount of that was appropriated to LEAs or school districts in 22-23 above the minimum guarantee rose by $800 million, so totaling $8.8 billion. And bottom line is state budget resources cannot absorb that. So what did the governor propose? He proposed to maintain, which you could look at it as a good thing, of course, maintain those funding levels for 22-23 for school districts, and then essentially beginning in 25-26, making annual payments back towards that of $1.8 billion. So I mentioned that there's a couple of agreements that were made last week. So the two-party agreement, that's the administration, Governor Newsom and his administration, and CTA. I won't go through all of this, but the key points is it continues to include internal borrowing, though it lowers that amount from $1.8 billion to $1.3 billion over that 5-year period. For 22-23, it includes a budget deferral. For 23-24, it suspends Prop 28, and so that's a different set of calculations. And I will note that suspension of Proposition 98 has only ever happened twice, so we've got that on the table as well. I mentioned a joint legislative plan. It's important that it's a joint. And so the highlights of that plan include the following of what I've listed here as it relates to education, specifically TK through 12. Now, the legislative proposal differs from the CTA Newsom administration agreement, which means that the issue will need to be negotiated still by legislative leaders as well as the governor. So all that to say, none of this is final. There's more to come. I just really wanted you to be aware, of the highlights of what we're looking for to come in the State Budget Act and in trailer bills that may follow and that sort of thing. But as it relates to this joint legislative plan, the overall funding funds Proposition 98 about $1.9 billion higher. It does fully fund COLA, just like the governor's May revision for the budget. The programmatic funding is roughly the same as the May revision, and then it treats Proposition 98 differently than both the CTA and the governor's proposal. So to be continued on Proposition 98. If you take anything from my rambling about Proposition 98 is just to understand that it is alone the biggest risk to the budget that we face right now, and how they're going to treat that $8.8 billion from 22-23, as well as the revenue assumptions for the rest of the budget. What sort of got us in this mess is the ultimate overestimating of revenue assumptions for 22-23. Okay. Is that enough about Prop 28? Should I move on to COLA? All right, let's look at COLA. That's another single biggest factor we want to look at in terms of the budget. Well, COLA's been all over the place for 24-25, and we have had a lot of conversations about that, and so I'm sorry that we're talking about that again, but as the board, I think you need to understand what the risks are to the budget and understand how that affects and can fluctuate our projections within the multi-year projections, because we have to be fiscally solvent above, I don't want to say above all else, but we have to be fiscally solvent. So the projections for the statutory COLA for 24-25 with the enacted state budget, so again, a little less than 12 months ago, today was 3.94%. In November, when we had the Legislative Analyst Office come out with their fiscal outlook, remember we started talking about, 1.27%, and it could go down to 0. And if it's something, will they fund it? By the time the governor's budget came out in January, that was down to 0.76, and statutory COLA, the final statutory COLA is now 1.07%. So, we were kind of waiting for quite a bit to see where the dust would settle, and here's where the dust has settled for now. So, and again, I'm talking big picture. Mimi's going to show you this as it relates to our district. But another slide I borrowed or stole from School Services of California, because I really liked this, and they called it a tale of 3 LCFF multi-year revenue projections. And if you'll just follow along really quick with the colors. So the green line is this is a sample district of 10,000 ADA, so a little larger than us, but not quite, not a whole lot larger than us. And so that green line is what did this district's revenue projections look like at first interim for 23-20, because remember, we're always looking at the budget for 3 years, right? So 23-24, 24-25, and 25-26. And you can see that steady growth, correct? Then we come to the red line, and this is base grant, by the way. This does not include supplemental concentration dollars. This is the base grant only. And so when we look at that red line, which is the bottom one there, is then districts, so we're not unlike other districts in the state. We're now at second interim. I'm sorry, I'm going to back up to first interim. So at first interim, we brought that to you in December, right? And remember me talking about the LAO and the 1.27%? That we built our first interim on the 3.94% COLA for next year. You probably recall Mimi and I showing you a scenario of what would all the same factors in the budget, but with that one change, due to our bottom line, so to speak. And we showed you that at 1.27% because, we wanted to look at what that would look like. So now we come around to second interim. We were here in March with that using a 0.76% COLA, and now here we are at the blue line with the adopted budget. So you can see the changing COLA and what that does to the financial perspective of the district there. So I really liked this and wanted to share it with you, as is the case with this chart. So School Services affectionately refers to this chart as the Mike Fine chart. Mike Fine is the CEO of FICMAT, and so I don't know why they refer to it as that, but I like this chart because what it's showing here, if you look in 23-24, which is the year that we're just ending when we had an 8.22% COLA, you can see in that bar immediately on the left that the base grant growth on a per student basis was $842, and the supplemental concentration growth for an average district was $167. So on a per student basis, the district is getting $1,000 more per student. But then we can't just look at the revenue side, we have to look at the expenditure side as well. So what are the expenditure increases that a district would look at? So you're looking at step and column increases for your employees. Inflation, that's things and services and utilities, those are going up just like they are for the rest of us. One of the unknowns is, and obviously it is increasing, at least in our district. I don't know of a district that it's not, but special education contributions continue to rise, as do rate increases. And School Services spent a lot of time actually this year in their presentation not just talking about the typical rate increases, which are PERS and health and welfare and that kind of thing, not STRS this year, Mimi will talk about that, but the cost for our liability insurance as a result of what each of you talked about earlier, that's an impact to districts, and so those can be unknown. And so when you look at the 23-24 example in the sample district, the revenues outpace the expenditures. That's a good thing. That allows you to make local decisions on how do you spend those extra dollars. But we have to look at a multi-year projection, right? And so when we look at going forward, 24, 25, and beyond, you can see that expenditures are growing at a faster rate than revenues are growing, and that's because of those low COLAs. And so we just have to keep that in mind. What does that mean? Not dissimilar for our district than for other districts as well, or most districts across the state, is what you're going to see is deficit spending. What you're going to see is a reduction in the ending fund balance as we use those balances that we've grown, in particular over the COVID years. That's true of our district, using those restricted dollars so that we could grow our unrestricted general fund to help stave off these low COLAs in this year. So I wanted to share that. And one more piece of information with you. Again, this is big picture and kind of things to look out for. Except for Diane and Tippy, you can share this with Marvin. I appreciated, and Kindy, of course. Appreciated everything that he said on ADA to enrollment rates, ADA capture rate, ADA yields, but the impact of COVID-19 on the multi-year projections, we're still feeling the impacts of COVID-19, and that's as it relates to our student attendance rates, right? I think it was at first interim, we also showed you a version of the multi-year if we were to increase our capture rate. And so this is statewide data as of 22-23. It's the last set of certified data points, but COVID-19 resonated through all facets of public education. including the rate at which students attended. So in 2019-20, on average, a student missed 9 days of school, per year. That grew, fast forwarding to 22-23, to 14 days of school. And so you can see by each of the different grade spans, if you look at that bottom row, they're 9 through 12. The majority of our students, of course, are 9 through 12. And so pre-pandemic, 19-20, school services used 19-20 here, even though that was the start of the COVID year. But you may recall that the governor changed the P2, the way we calculate our ADA in that year, so as not to penalize school districts when kids went to distance learning. So they moved that P2 divisor date up to February. So these numbers actually also reflect 18-19 in terms of trending. So you can see for the average 9 through 12 school district, their enrollment capture rate, ADA capture rate was 93.81. And then we look at the most recent set of data and we're at 90.61. Our district is not quite that high, though we did increase by a little better than 1% this year in 22-23, we're at 87.66, and Mimi will show you the data for us as we expect, projecting based on this moment in time, as we don't have all the data yet for the current year, going up by about 1%. So good job, everybody that had anything at all to do with that, because that is more revenue into the district. So. All right, are there any questions on the state budget before I let Mimi take it away on the district budget? I hope that wasn't too much, but I really wanted you as the board to understand the real big picture scenario, the things we need to look out for. Okay, you're welcome. I can keep talking.
Okay. Good evening. So as Candice went over the May revision proposal. So we built our budget based on that proposal. We finally, with all the changes in COLA, then in developing our budget for 24-25, that we use that COLA that is being proposed at May revise. During the process, just gonna go over the process, our adopted budgets. Our process in developing our adopted budget is basically estimating, mostly estimating our revenue using the COLA that's been proposed during the May revise. We also estimate, projected and estimates our expenditures. That includes payroll cost, other non-payroll costs, contracted services, materials and supplies, and other expenditures. During the same process, we are also doing the estimated actuals for the current year, which is 23-24, where we look at the expenditures as if we're closing the year. So we kind of estimate how our expenditures and revenue and preparing for closing the books, what we call the unaudited actuals. Okay, so this is our district we use for calculating our LCFF revenue. So we start with the 23-24 base grant per ADA, and I put all the grade levels in there. We use the 1.07% COLA, and that's about over $100 per grade level. And if we could remember that 23-24 is 8.22%, that's probably like $800 change from the prior year. But with this COLA, it's about $100, over $100 per grade level. So that brings us to our base grant, which is $10,470 for that grade and $12,144 for that grade. We also get the grade span adjustment, which is only for 9 to 12, and that's the dollar amount in there. And that is our adjusted base grant per ADA. And again, this calculation is based on the ADA of the district. And from that, the supplemental and concentration is also being calculated, and that's part of the LCFF funding. and that's what we call the LCAP dollars. And that gives us that 13,321 for grades 7 to 8 and 15,841 for grades 9 to 12. So this is basically showing the enrollment to ADA, or what we call the capture rate, from 2018 to 2018-19 fiscal year, from that year. And we added the 24-25, which is our projected budget, and an additional 2 out years, which is required for the district to show. And we could see that the capture rate pre-COVID is at 92, that high capture rate. And 21-22, then we start getting the actual ADA of about, it's 87.5%. Then I couldn't read. In 22-23, compared to 23-24, we got a little bit increase of ADA, which is a good thing. It's about 1.28% increase of our capture rate, which means that our ADA it's a little bit higher in the current year based on our P2. And in using the capture rate, we engage conservative approach in projecting using the capture rate and projecting our LCFF revenue. And we also use our the current year capture rate, which is the ADA for 23-24, in projecting the ADA capture rate in the out years. So our for multi-year projection assumption summary, and from 23-24, we show the COLA in here for each year, showing at 24-25 is 1.07%. And these are the COLA that's being proposed on the May revise. We show the enrollment also in each year, and with a growth of 1% for each, beginning 24-25, plus the 2 out years. And the ADA, it's ADA for each year is being shown also here, and the capture rate is also stays the same for 24-25 based on the enrollment projection of 1%. We have the unduplicated pupil percentage, which we use to calculate the revenue for the supplemental and concentration, which is the LCAP revenue. And for the STRS rate, there's no change. It stays the same for all the years, and PERS rate changes every single year. So we use the 24-25, which is 27.05. It's percent, which already changed from the last time you used that rate when we presented the second interim financial report. So this is the summary of our, there's a lot of numbers here. It's a summary of the MYPL, the multi-year projections for the unrestricted general fund. This is only unrestricted and doesn't include the general fund. So for 23-24, as I mentioned, that we adjusted our budget, what we call the estimated actuals, based on what we think we're gonna close the year. So we made some adjustment in there. We do some transfer of expenditures also from unrestricted to from restricted to unrestricted, and basically for the purpose of using the restricted dollar, the one-time funding, and that we have that ending fund balance in there, which is the beginning fund balance for the 24-25, and if you look at the ending fund balance in 24-25, that were over 10%, which we are required to commit anything that's over 10%, and through board resolutions. and we're gonna bring that on June 12 board meeting. And so with all this projection, and again, these are all based on projected revenue and expenditures, whatever available information we have at a given time, which is when we're developing our budget. And if we look at the 26-27, which is required for us to show the 2 out years from the adopted budget, that we're down to 6.01% as our ending balance percentage, which means that that the 24-25 are over 10% that we will commit to use for deficit spending, which is showing here that every single year we have that deficit spending. So any dollar that we committed for that's over the 10%, we're going to be using that for that purpose. And this probably slide is familiar as we showed this the last presentation also. This is just basically the summary of our contributions. We contribute to our special ed because of the expenditures. It doesn't support the revenue we're getting from basically special ed. And also you could see that every single year to year, the contribution increase. And the same thing with the contribution, which is a required contribution to routine maintenance account, which is a 3%, was based on the combined the general fund expenditures. And that also because of the increasing expenditures every single year, that contribution also increases. And you could also see that we are in 24-25, we start using our one-time COVID ADA dollar. That's basically part of the contribution. And in 25-26, then we use the portion of that. In 26-27, that's, if you can see that we're up to 35 million total contribution because we shifted back to its planned level of expenditures. So for the next steps, so the board will open public hearing to receive input on the district's budget. We will present the final budget on the June 12 board meeting. And the district adopted budget and as well as the LCAP will be reviewed by RCOE. And after the California state budget is adopted, if there's a need for us to do a 45-day budget revision, that's basically if there's a major changes, then we will work on that 45-day budget if there's a need to. Questions for me? Okay. Yes, yeah. So that one is the CalPAT, right?
Yeah, that would be our certified.
Uh-huh.
That's 10,000.
Yeah.
I know we went through it.
Uh-huh.
You'll have to know.
Yes.
Certified numbers.
Uh-huh. And we certified that in January, right? Yes, yeah. So we have that actual number. Yeah.
Yeah, so do you mind if I take this one? Sorry, I've been hopping up here all night. So the reason for that is we used to receive those mental health dollars for those services. The county, I'm sorry, let me back up. We didn't receive them. The county ran those services. Then we started having to provide those services through special education ourselves. And so we were using up a large ending fund balance from those years. This year, we had to start contributing from the general fund for that. So that's why you saw that larger number. So when we were looking at preparing our budget, and again, going back to how do we use our most restricted dollars first, we were able to put the encroachment amount or the contribution amount into the supplemental concentration portion of the budget. So the costs are still there, the expenses are just there. We're just using a different color money to pay for it, so to speak, to be more strategic. Good question. It didn't go away, it just changed sources because we were trying to be more strategic.
Thank you, ladies. Are there any public comments?
No public comments.
The public hearing regarding the 2024-25 district budget is now closed at 8:06 PM. That was premature, wasn't it? There we go. Sorry. There was a motion by Mr. Nelson and a second by Mr. Campos. Sorry, 1 second. Please vote. Item 9.2 passes 5-0. Item 10.1, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn the special meeting of the Board of Trustees?
So moved.
Any discussion? See none? Please vote. Item 10.1 passes 5-0. The meeting is adjourned at 8:08 PM.